Welcome to the jungle. It's your money. It's your life. Take control. Money. It's one of those topics. Like religion or politics, you just don't bring it up at the dinner table. Tony Robbins dives right into this taboo. He kicks things off by saying that for most of us, money isn't really what we're after. What we actually want are the feelings we think money will give us: freedom, security, the power to help our families, and the ability to live life on our own terms. But here's the catch he points out. You either master money or it masters you. And in today's world, it feels like the game is rigged. Gone are the days of getting a good job, working for 40 years, and retiring with a gold watch and a pension. That world is over. Now, we're up against things like high-frequency trading, where supercomputers make millions of trades in the blink of an eye. Robbins quotes the author Michael Lewis, who flat out said the U.S. stock market is rigged. So how is the average person supposed to compete with that? What chance do we have against flying robots trading at the speed of light? It's overwhelming, and that's by design. The financial industry wants it to feel complex, so we hand our money over to them and pay their fees. This is where the author, Tony Robbins, pivots. He says he's not another guru promising a magic stock pick. His whole approach, for the nearly 4 decades he's been a coach, is that success leaves clues. He believes the fastest way to get results is to find someone who's already mastered what you want to achieve and model what they do. So to write this book, he didn't just share his own opinions. He went out and interviewed 50 of the most brilliant financial minds on the planet. We're talking self-made billionaires, Nobel Prize winners, and titans of Wall Street. He shares a story about his meeting with Dalio. If you haven't heard of him, Dalio is basically the Steve Jobs of the investing world. He founded Bridgewater, the largest hedge fund on the planet, managing over $160 billion. This is a guy governments call for advice. Getting access to him is nearly impossible. When Robbins finally sits down with him, Dalio gets straight to the point. He says the average person can win at the money game, but not by trying to outsmart the pros. He compares it to poker, saying, "This is poker with the best poker players on earth. You don't want to be in that game." So what's the answer? Dalio reveals that instead of trying to compete, you need a system, a simple way to set up your investments that protects you no matter what the market is doing, whether it's crashing or soaring. He calls it a way to protect yourself against all downsides. After some convincing, he actually laid out a sample portfolio for Robbins, a specific recipe of investments that, when back-tested, made money about 85% of the time over the last 30 years with very minimal losses even during the 2008 crash. It's a strategy anyone can use. This leads to the core mission of the book. Robbins explains that his journey wasn't just about gathering information. He became an advocate. He discovered that the ultra-wealthy have access to incredible investment opportunities with low risk and high potential returns, things the rest of us never even hear about. He felt that wasn't right. So, he made it his goal to level the playing field, working with some of these top-tier firms to make their tools and strategies accessible to everyday people, sometimes even for free. Why this mission is so important to him? It's not just an abstract idea. He talks about growing up poor, with bill collectors knocking at the door and wearing clothes from the thrift shop. He says, "I can't stand to see anybody suffer." The 2008 financial crisis, which wiped out the savings of millions of Americans, was his tipping point. He saw a documentary about the Wall Street insiders who caused the crash and walked away with bonuses while everyone else paid the price. Instead of just being angry, he asked himself, "What can I do?" And this book was his answer. He also connects this personal financial journey to a bigger purpose: giving back. He shares a deeply held belief that if you create wealth, it's your privilege and responsibility to help others. He practices this himself, and he built a philanthropic mission right into the book. Just by getting the book, readers are contributing to feeding millions of families in need across America. He makes the point that giving isn't something you do after you get rich. It's a mindset you adopt now. He argues, if you won't give a dime out of a dollar, you won't give $1 million out of $10 million. Giving now, even when you feel like you don't have much, helps shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance. He's not just sharing financial tips. He's laying out a complete blueprint. He acknowledges that most people who buy a book like this never read past the first chapter, and he urges the reader to be different, to commit to the journey. He promises that if you take these steps, the feeling of empowerment you'll get from mastering your finances will spill over into every other part of your life. It's not just about retirement. It's about having the quality of life you want and deserve, starting today. It's about taking yourself from a place of financial stress to one of excitement, confidence, and ultimately, freedom. The 7 simple steps to financial freedom. Create an income for life. Have you ever tried to play a video game against a 10-year-old? It's completely humiliating, right? They know every secret passage, every enemy spawn point. They don't just react, they anticipate. This exact skill, anticipation, is the ultimate power in life and, especially, in finance. He says, losers react, leaders anticipate. The whole premise of his book is to help you learn from the masters, the financial titans who know the road ahead, so you can anticipate the challenges and navigate the jungle of money to reach your destination. A life where you have an income stream without ever having to work again. But let's be real, everything about money seems so much harder today. Why is that? Well, the game has completely changed. Our grandparents lived in a world where Social Security was new, and life expectancy was just 62 years old. The system was never designed for people to live on it for 30 years in retirement. Now, we're living longer than ever. A recent survey found that the #1 fear for baby boomers isn't death, it's outliving their savings, and the deck is stacked against us. Almost half of working Americans haven't even tried to calculate what they'll need to retire. And then there's the tax man. Imagine you have $1 and you could magically double it every year for 20 years. That single dollar would turn into over $1 million. But now, run that same scenario and pay a 33% tax each year. What do you end up with? Not $750,000, not $500,000. You end up with just over $28,000. That's the reality of what we're up against. It's a crisis, and it's why we need a new plan. So, if we know we need to save and invest, why don't we do it? This is the most important part of the puzzle. Tony Robbins dives deep into behavioral economics to show that we humans are not rational creatures, especially with money. Our brains are wired with what he calls cognitive illusions that constantly fool us. He shares an example about organ donation. In some countries, almost everyone is an organ donor, while in their next-door neighbors, almost no one is. The reason? It's not about culture or religion. It all comes down to the wording on the form at the DMV. One form says, "Check here if you want to participate." The other says, "Check here if you don't want to participate." It turns out most of us won't check the box, no matter what it says. We just stick with the default. That's inertia. When a problem feels too big or too complicated, we freeze and do nothing. And this is exactly what happens with our finances. Complexity is the enemy of execution. The system is designed to be confusing, so we get overwhelmed and give up. That's why his solution isn't about giving you more complicated information. It's about creating a simple, automated, step-by-step plan that you can actually follow. He believes true mastery only comes from repetition until the right actions become second nature. So, what is the plan? The book lays out a 7-step blueprint to take you from where you are to where you want to be. It's a roadmap designed to give you clarity and control. Section 1 is about taking that first crucial step, deciding to become an owner in the economy, not just a consumer, and setting up an automated system to save and invest. Section 2 is about becoming an insider. You learn the rules of the game before you play, uncovering the hidden fees and marketing myths that can drain your wealth. Section 3 helps you figure out the price of your dreams and create a winnable financial plan. Section 4 walks you through what many experts call the most important investment decision of your life: asset allocation, or how to divide up your money to manage risk and growth. Section 5 is about creating a lifetime income plan, a system that gives you upside potential without the terrifying downside, protecting you from market crashes. Section 6, called the Billionaire's Playbook, is where you learn directly from the masters of the game, how they invest, how they think, and how they've thrived in every market condition. And finally, Section 7 is about putting it all into action and discovering that the secret to living is giving. This isn't just a book to be read. It's a journey to be taken. The steps are laid out. The path is clear. It's time to stop reacting and start anticipating. Tap the power. Make the most important financial decision of your life. Warren Buffett famously said his wealth came from three things: living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest. And it's that last one, compound interest, that is the most powerful and misunderstood force in finance. To really get it, Tony Robbins shares a story from economist Burton Malkiel about twin brothers. One brother, let's call him William, starts investing $4,000 a year at age 20. He does this for 20 years, and then stops completely at age 40, just letting the money grow. His twin, James, waits until he's 40 to start. He also invests $4,000 a year, but he does it for 25 years, all the way until retirement at 65. So James invested more money for more years. Who ends up with more? It's not even close. William, the brother who started early and invested less, ends up with almost $2.5 million. James, the late bloomer, has less than $400,000. That's the staggering power of giving your money more time to grow. It's a force so powerful that Albert Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. This brings us to a huge misconception: the idea that you can earn your way to financial freedom. We think if we just get that big promotion or work harder, we'll be set. But with some pretty shocking examples that it's just not true. We've all seen stories of celebrities who made hundreds of millions of dollars and ended up bankrupt. Actress Kim Basinger earned $10 million a picture and still went broke. Boxing legend Mike Tyson made nearly $500 million and lost it all. The list goes on and on. Tony Robbins points to the financial strategy of another boxing champ, Floyd Money Mayweather Jr., as described by his former business partner, the rapper 50 Cent. It's fight, get the money, spend the money, fight. It sounds crazy, but at some level, many of us are living a version of that same cycle. We work, get paid, spend it all, and then have to go back to work. A huge paycheck doesn't protect you from that trap. What does? A different strategy entirely. The solution proposed is to stop trading your time for money and instead build what Tony Robbins calls a money machine, or a freedom fund. This is an engine that works for you, 24/7, even while you sleep. And building it starts with making what he calls the most important financial decision of your life. That decision is simply to choose a percentage of your income that you will pay to yourself first, before the rent, before the groceries, before anything else. It's not about what you can afford to save at the end of the month. It's about setting aside a fixed portion, say 10%, 15%, or 20%, off the top. This is the seed money for your freedom fund. This is how you shift from being a consumer in the economy to becoming an owner and an investor. It's the only way to tap into that incredible power of compounding we talked about. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds great, but I can't afford to save that much. Tony Robbins shares these real-world stories that prove you don't need a high income to do this. There's the story of Theodore Johnson, a UPS employee who never made more than $14,000 a year. But he was disciplined. He saved 20% of every single paycheck and invested it in company stock. By the time he was 90, his fortune had grown to over $70 million. Then there's Osceola McCarty, a washerwoman from Mississippi, who, by pinching pennies her whole life, was able to donate $150,000 for a college scholarship fund. These are ordinary people who achieved extraordinary results through consistency. And today, we have behavioral science to make it even easier. Tony Robbins introduces a concept called save more tomorrow. It's a brilliantly simple idea. If saving more money today feels like a loss, then you commit to increasing your savings automatically in the future, specifically when you get a pay raise. Because you never had that extra money in your hands, you don't feel the loss of saving it. It's a painless way to dramatically ramp up your savings rate over time. So, It's not about a big score. It's about making a decision, creating a system, and letting the quiet, unstoppable power of compounding do the heavy lifting for you. Money mastery. It's time to break through. We often think about what money can do for us, but have you ever thought about what it does to us? Money doesn't change you. It just magnifies who you already are. If you're kind, you have more to be kind with. If you're selfish, well, you have a lot more to be selfish with. To bring this idea to life, he shares two stories that show the two extreme faces of wealth. First, there's the tragic tale of Adolf Merkel. In 2007, he was the richest man in Germany, worth about $12 billion. He was a titan. But in 2008, he made a huge bet against Volkswagen stock, and it went catastrophically wrong. He lost about $750 million almost overnight. A few days later, even though he still had $9 billion left in his name, he walked in front of a train and ended his life. Why? Because for him, money wasn't just money. It was his identity. Losing his status as the richest man was a loss he couldn't bear. Then you have the complete opposite story. Chuck Feeney, the guy who co-founded the duty-free shopping empire. He built a fortune of over $7.5 billion. But you'd never know it. He flew coach, wore a $15 plastic watch, and didn't own a car. And like Merkel, his bank account also started dwindling. But Feeney's money disappeared because he was giving it all away, anonymously. For 30 years, he worked to use his wealth to change lives all over the world. His goal, he says, is to bounce the last check he ever writes. One man died because he lost a fraction of his fortune. The other finds purpose in giving all of his away. It all comes down to what money really means to you. Tony Robbins shares that his own perspective on this was shaped when he was just 11 years old. His family was struggling, with no food in the house for Thanksgiving. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. A stranger was standing there with bags of groceries for a full Thanksgiving dinner. That single act of kindness from someone who expected nothing in return changed his life. It taught him that if strangers could care about him, he could care about them. He promised himself that day that he would find a way to pay it forward. A giving mindset isn't about how much you have. It's about perspective. So what drives these completely different approaches to life and money? It comes down to what we're really after. Tony Robbins breaks it down into 6 core human needs that drive everything we do. The first 4 are the needs of the personality. 1. Certainty. This is our need for safety, comfort, and control. It's a survival instinct. 2. Uncertainty, or variety. If everything were certain, we'd be bored out of our minds. We need surprises, challenges, and excitement. 3. Significance. We all need to feel important, special, and needed. You can get this by being the best at something or by having the biggest problems. It's a powerful driver. 4. Love and connection. This is what we all want most, to love and be loved. It's the oxygen of life. The last 2 needs are the needs of the spirit, and this is where true fulfillment is found. 5. Growth. If you're not growing, you're dying. We must constantly expand and improve to feel alive. 6th contribution. This is the ultimate secret. The secret to living is giving. Life isn't about them. It's about we. Meaning comes from what you contribute, not what you get. Money is a vehicle that can help meet many of these needs. It can definitely buy you certainty and significance. But if you're chasing money just for significance, it will always leave you feeling empty. True significance comes from the inside, from who you become and what you give. So what's the ultimate breakthrough? After all this psychology, what's the secret to real wealth? Tony Robbins tells a story about interviewing Sir John Templeton, one of the greatest investors of all time. When he asked this multi-billionaire for the secret to wealth, his answer wasn't about stocks or portfolios. He simply said, "It's gratitude." When you live in a state of gratitude, there's no room for fear or anger. It's the foundation of a rich life, regardless of what's in your bank account. That said, as you move forward on your financial journey, you need to be prepared. Not everyone you meet will be operating from a place of gratitude and contribution. The financial world has traps. So now that we've set the internal foundation, it's time to arm ourselves with the knowledge to navigate the path ahead. Become the insider. Know the rules before you get in the game. Break free, shattering the 9 financial myths. Have you ever heard that old saying, "He who has the gold makes the rules"? Well, when it comes to your money, it's time to learn the rules of the game. Because the financial system is like a jungle, filled with hidden traps designed to separate you from your wealth. Imagine someone says to you, "Hey, I want you to put up 100% of the money and take 100% of the risk. If we make a profit, I get to keep 60% of it in fees. And oh, by the way, if we lose money, you lose. But I still get paid." You'd laugh them out of the room, right? But here's the kicker. If you're one of the 92 million Americans invested in a typical mutual fund, you've already taken that deal. Robbins sat down with Jack Bogle, the legendary founder of Vanguard, who explained how this happens. It's marketing, and the fees are hidden. Bogle gives an example. A single $10,000 investment could grow to over $500,000 over a lifetime. But with typical industry fees of around 2.5%, your final take would be just over $140,000. You took all the risk, and the professionals walked away with over 75% of your potential gains. Ignorance isn't bliss, it's pain. So how did we get here? How did we end up in this do-it-yourself system that seems designed to fail? Our parents' generation had pensions, a guaranteed income for life. But starting in the 80s, we replaced that security with the 401k. And as one expert puts it, this new system has been a failed experiment. It expects regular people with jobs and families and lives to lead to somehow become professional investors. We're told to hand our money to a professional, often a broker. But what many don't realize is that most brokers are not required by law to act in your best interest. They often get paid to push products that are most profitable for their firm, not necessarily for you. Now, this isn't to say they are bad people. Many are doing their best with the tools they've been given. But the system itself has a built-in conflict of interest. After hearing all that, it's easy to feel like the game is rigged and there's no way to win. But here's the good news. The game is absolutely winnable. In fact, technology has made it easier than ever for the little guy to do well. You can invest anywhere in the world with the click of a button. And the insiders? They're still playing the game because they know the new rules. They know about powerful tools that have never existed for the average person before. Tony Robbins teases one such tool backed by a major bank that gives you 100% protection on your initial investment while still letting you participate in 75% to 90% of the stock market's gains. If the market crashes, you don't lose a penny. These are the kinds of strategies that were once reserved for the ultra-rich, but they are becoming more accessible. So, what does this journey to financial freedom actually look like? Tony Robbins paints a picture of climbing Mount Everest. This climb is your accumulation phase, the years you spend saving and growing your money until you reach the pinnacle. That pinnacle is a point of critical mass where the interest from your investments is enough to support your lifestyle without you ever having to work again. But reaching the top is only half the journey. The second part is what happens after. This is the decumulation phase, where you get to ski down the mountain, enjoy your life, and spend the money you've worked so hard to grow. This is where you conquer the #1 fear for so many people: outliving your money. It's a phase the financial industry rarely talks about because their business is focused on getting you to accumulate assets, not spend them. To have unconventional success, you can't be guided by conventional wisdom. The path forward is to systematically shatter the 9 biggest financial myths that keep most people trapped. By understanding these truths, you can protect yourself, maximize your growth, and finally take control. So, let's get ready to break the chains. Myth 1. The $13 trillion lie. Invest with us. We'll beat the market. Let's talk about the biggest myth on Wall Street, the $13 trillion lie. It's the idea that the so-called experts, the professional fund managers, can beat the market for you. It sounds great, right? You're busy, so you hand your money over to a pro who promises to get you better returns. But what if the deal you're actually signing up for looks like this? You put up 100% of the money and take 100% of the risk. If you make a profit, the manager keeps the majority of it. And if you lose money, you take the hit, but the manager still gets paid. You'd never agree to that. But that's essentially the structure of a typical, actively managed mutual fund once you factor in all the hidden fees. The legendary founder of Vanguard, Jack Bogle, showed how these fees can eat up over 75% of your potential lifetime returns. It's a bad deal, hiding in plain sight. So, what's the truth? Here's the statistic that should stop you in your tracks. An incredible 96% of actively managed mutual funds fail to beat the market over any sustained period of time. When we say the market, we're usually talking about an index, like the S&P 500, which is just a list of the 500 biggest and best companies in America. Instead of trying to pick the winners out of that group, you can just own a tiny piece of all of them through a simple, low-cost index fund. This isn't some fringe idea. This is what the smartest minds in finance, from Warren Buffett to David Swensen, advise for the average person. Buffett is so confident that the pros can't win that he made $1 million bet against a group of hedge funds, wagering that they couldn't beat a simple S&P 500 index fund over 10 years. And for most of that decade, the index fund was absolutely crushing them. The hard data on this is even more painful. Over a 20-year period, the S&P 500 index returned about 9.3% a year. The average mutual fund investor, they made just over 2.5%. That is a massive gap. Why? Because we're human. We chase performance. We hear about a hot fund, pile in at the top, and then when the market gets scary, we panic and sell at the bottom. We let our emotions get the best of us, and it costs us our financial future. As one famous manager said, a bull market is like sex. It feels best just before it ends. We get caught up in the hype and get burned every time. Now you might be thinking, but what about the funds with 5 stars? I only invest in the best. Well, it turns out that's another myth. A study in the Wall Street Journal found that of all the funds that had a 5-star rating, only a tiny fraction, less than 2%, still had that top rating 10 years later. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Fund companies are also known to quietly close or merge their losing funds to scrub the bad records, so you only see the ones that got lucky. And what about the rare unicorns who do consistently beat the market? They exist, but they are inaccessible. Their doors are closed to the public, requiring tens of millions of dollars just to get in. So, what's the path forward? For the growth portion of your money, align yourself with the market instead of trying to beat it. Use low-cost index funds. By doing that, you're already outperforming 96% of the professionals, but that's not the whole story. The market goes down about 30% of the time. You also need a strategy to protect yourself during those downturns. Tony Robbins introduces the idea of an all-weather portfolio and teases strategies that were once reserved for the super rich. Ways to participate in the market's gains while having 100% protection on your initial investment. Imagine the peace of mind in knowing you can't lose. That's what it means to be an insider. You stop playing their game and start playing your own. Myth 2. Our fees. They're a small price to pay. You know that feeling when you check out of a hotel and see a bunch of surprise charges on your bill? A resort fee? A towel fee? It's infuriating. You feel tricked. Well, get ready, because the mutual fund industry has turned this into an art form. Tony Robbins calls it the world's largest skimming operation, and it's siphoning away your retirement savings. This brings us to the second huge myth in finance, the idea that the fees you pay are just a small price for professional management. It sounds reasonable until you see the real numbers. The average actively managed mutual fund actually costs you about 3.17% per year. That might not sound like a lot, but compare it to a low-cost index fund that lets you own the entire market for as little as 0.14%. You're paying nearly 30 times more for a product that, as we've learned, underperforms 96% of the time. To see how devastating this is, Tony Robbins tells a story about three friends. They all start with the same amount of money and get the same 7% return from the market. The only difference is their fees, 1%, 2%, and 3% respectively. After 30 years, the friend paying 1% in fees has nearly twice as much money as the friend paying 3%. We're talking about a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. As Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, has shown over a lifetime, these small fees can devour 50% to 70% of your potential nest egg. It's the difference between retiring comfortably and having to work an extra decade. So how do they get away with this? It's like a magic trick. They want you to focus on one hand, the expense ratio, which is the fee they actually advertise, while the other hand is quietly taking your money. The expense ratio is just the tip of the iceberg. One economist, Robert Hilton Smith, decided to dig into the fine print of his own 401k funds. After a month of research, he uncovered a mind-boggling list of 17 different kinds of fees buried in the jargon, things like transaction costs, administrative fees, account fees, and something called soft dollar costs. It's a system designed to be confusing. You don't need to know what all these fees are called. You just need to know they exist and that they're bleeding your account dry. It's a financial death by 1,000 cuts. So how do you escape the fee factories? The solution is beautifully simple and incredibly effective. You need to get your total annual investment costs down to 1.25% or less. That includes the cost of any advice you get plus the cost of the investments themselves. How is this even possible? By using low-cost index funds, like the ones from Vanguard or dimensional funds. These funds don't have a highly paid manager trying and failing to beat the market. They just track the market, and their fees are a tiny fraction of what the big mutual funds charge. This single change is the key. By replacing your expensive funds with low-cost alternatives, you stop the bleeding and put that money back to work for your future, not your fund managers. Now that you've seen behind the curtain, you can't unsee it. You're becoming an insider. You are the chess player, not the chess piece. Knowledge is potential power, but execution trumps knowledge. The next step is to take action. Resolve right now that you will never again pay insane fees for subpar performance. Making this one change could get you to your financial goals 5, 10, or even 15 years faster. It's time to take back your money. Myth 3. Our returns? What you see is what you get. You know how on dating apps everyone's profile picture looks suspiciously perfect. That's kind of how mutual funds report their returns. Tony Robbins calls it putting lipstick on a pig, and it's another one of those myths designed to mislead you. Let's start with the illusion of average returns. This is going to blow your mind. Imagine a fund has a wild couple of years. It goes up 50% one year and then down 50% the next. What's the average return? Well, you'd think it's 0%, right? You should break even. But you'd be wrong. If you started with $100,000 after those 2 years, you wouldn't have $100,000. You'd be left with just $75,000. You lost 25% of your money on an investment with a 0% average return. It's a statistical trick that makes performance look much better than it actually is. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the grand illusion doesn't stop there. This is the technical part, but it's so important. The returns that mutual funds advertise are what's known as time-weighted returns. It's a fancy term for a simple, misleading idea. They calculate their performance as if you invested a lump sum of money on day one and didn't touch it for the entire year. But who does that? Most of us invest over time, contributing a little bit from every paycheck into our 401k. Our actual return, based on when our money goes in and out, is called a dollar-weighted return. And according to the legendary Jack Bogle, founder of Vanguard, the dollar-weighted return that investors actually get is often 3% lower per year than the time-weighted return the fund advertises. So when you see a fund boasting a 6% return, you might have only gotten 3%. It's a huge difference. So what's the solution to all this misleading math? First, you need to remember the truths we've already uncovered. 1. 96% of fund managers don't beat the market. 2. Hidden fees will destroy your wealth. And now 3. The returns they advertise aren't what you actually get. You are no longer flying blind. You're becoming an insider. And as an insider, you can take back control. There are simple online calculators, one called MoneyChimp, where you can plug in your own numbers and see your actual rate of return. No more guesswork. No more being fooled by the glossy brochure. Learning all this can make you feel like you can't trust anyone in the financial world. It's a natural reaction. You start to think you have to do everything yourself, become an island. But that's not the answer. There are incredible, trustworthy financial professionals out there who will put your interests first. You don't have to go it alone. The real question is, how do you find them? How do you tell the difference between a real guide and a salesman in disguise? As the famous source Deep Throat from the Watergate scandal said, follow the money, always follow the money. And that's exactly what we'll do next. Myth 4. I'm your broker and I'm here to help. After learning about the crazy high fees and underperformance of most mutual funds, it's easy to feel trapped. Tony Robbins uses this powerful image of a wildebeest at a riverbank in Africa. It knows the water is full of crocodiles. It just saw one of its buddies get snatched. But it also knows if it doesn't drink, it will die in the hot sun. That's the modern investor. We know we can't just sit on our cash because inflation will eat it alive. But dipping our toes into the market feels incredibly risky. So, who can we trust to guide us through these dangerous waters? This brings us to one of the most important distinctions you will ever learn about your money: the difference between a broker and a fiduciary. Most people think they're the same thing, but legally, they are worlds apart. Your typical broker, who might call themselves a financial advisor or wealth manager, operates under something called the suitability standard. This means the investment they sell you only has to be suitable for your general goals. It doesn't have to be the best option. It doesn't have to be the cheapest option. Think about it. Would you want a suitable marriage or fly on an airline with a suitable safety record? Of course not. A fiduciary, on the other hand, operates under a much higher legal standard. They are required by law to put your best interests first, always. It's a simple but profound difference. A broker is like a butcher. When you walk into a butcher shop and ask what's for dinner, the answer is always meat. A fiduciary is like a dietitian. They're going to recommend what's actually best for your health, whether it's fish, chicken, or vegetables. One is paid to sell a product. The other is paid to give you conflict-free advice. The evidence of this conflict of interest is everywhere. For example, a study found that nearly half of all mutual fund managers don't own a single share in the fund they manage. Think about that. The chef doesn't eat his own cooking. What does that tell you about the ingredients? Then there's the classic story of the Enron collapse. This massive company was cooking its books and heading for bankruptcy. But even as it was crashing and burning, what were the big Wall Street firms telling their clients? Their research reports overwhelmingly said, buy or hold, right up until the stock was worthless. The firms were protecting their own interests, not their clients. So what's the solution? How do you find a dietitian instead of a butcher? The answer is to actively seek out and align yourself with a true independent fiduciary. Tony Robbins talks about a partnership he helped create to level the playing field. They launched a service called Stronghold Financial, which has a patented online system that lets anyone, not just the wealthy, link their investment accounts and get a free analysis. In about 5 minutes, it shows you the real fees you're paying, the hidden risks you're taking, and provides a conflict-free plan forward. But whether you use that tool or find someone on your own, the key criteria are the same. You need to ask them directly. 1. Are you a registered investment advisor, a legal fiduciary? 2. How do you get paid? Is it a transparent fee for advice, or do you get commissions for selling products? 3. Where will my money actually be held? It should be with a large, reputable, third-party custodian like Schwab, Fidelity, or TD Ameritrade, not the advisor's own firm. Finding someone who can answer these questions correctly is how you get a real guide for your journey. It's how you stop being the chess piece and become the chess player. Myth 5. Your retirement is just a 401k away. For most of us, it's the only retirement plan we've ever known, but the 401k was never meant to be our sole lifeline. It started as a nice little supplement, a way for executives to tuck away some extra cash. But over time, companies saw it as a golden opportunity to get rid of expensive, guaranteed pensions and shift all the risk and complexity onto us, the employees. We've become the guinea pigs in a massive retirement experiment, and the results are just now coming in. So, why is this system so broken for the average person? In her article, Our Ridiculous Approach to Retirement, expert Teresa Ghilarducci lays out just how impossible the expectations are. To succeed, you basically need to know when you're going to die, save a huge chunk of your income from day one, never touch it for any life emergency, and earn a steady return every single year. It's a recipe for failure. The system expects you to be a part-time investment genius while also working a full-time job and raising a family. On top of that, most 401k plans are loaded with up to 17 different layers of fees. These fees are like a hole in your boat, slowly sinking your retirement dreams. They can eat away 50% to 70% of your potential nest egg over a lifetime. The solution is to find a low-cost, transparent 401k plan that doesn't treat your retirement account like a piggy bank for Wall Street. Tony Robbins shares his own story of discovering that his company's big-name 401k plan was loaded with excessive fees. After a frustrating search, he found a firm called America's Best 401k that was built differently. Instead of offering a menu of expensive, underperforming mutual funds, they use only low-cost index funds. The difference was staggering. His company was able to cut its total plan fees from over 2.5% down to just 0.75%. That change alone put over $1 million back into the pockets of his employees over the life of the plan. This is the power of finding a low-cost solution. There are tools out there, like the fee checker on the America's Best 401k website, that let you see exactly how much your own plan is costing you. Now you might be thinking, what can I do? I'm just an employee. It turns out you have more leverage than you think. And if you're a business owner, listen up. The Department of Labor holds business owners legally responsible for making sure their 401k plan has reasonable fees. They've been handing out huge fines to companies with bad plans. This gives employees a powerful tool. You can go to your boss or HR department armed with this information and advocate for a change. You're not just helping yourself, you're protecting the company and helping all of your colleagues. Finally, let's talk about a game-changing strategy, the Roth 401k. The conventional wisdom is to take the tax deduction on your 401k today and pay taxes later in retirement. But with our national debt skyrocketing, does anyone really think taxes will be lower in the future? If you were a farmer, would you rather pay tax on the small seed you plant or on the giant harvest you grow? The answer is obvious. A Roth 401k lets you pay tax on the seed, your contributions today. Then, all of that growth, the entire harvest, is 100% tax-free in retirement. It's one of the best legal tax havens available, and it gives you certainty about how much of your money is actually yours to keep. By combining a low-cost plan with a smart Roth strategy, you can turn your 401k from a leaky bucket into a powerful engine for your financial future. Myth 6. Target date funds. Just set it and forget it. If you've ever looked at the investment menu in your 401k, you've probably seen them. Target date funds. They have names like Retirement 2045 or Freedom 2050. The sales pitch is incredibly seductive. Just pick the year you plan to retire, put your money in, and forget about it. The fund promises to automatically get more conservative as you get older. But this simple solution has some major problems hiding under the surface. For starters, the reason these funds are on your 401k menu in the first place is often because of a pay-to-play system, where fund companies pay for that shelf space. The very foundation of these funds is built on shaky ground. Target date funds are based on two giant assumptions. One, that bonds are always safe, and two, that stocks and bonds always move in opposite directions. But as we saw in the 2008 crash, both can fall hard at the same time. This has led to some massive misunderstandings. A survey found that over half of investors in target date funds didn't think they could lose money over a 10-year period, and nearly a third thought they provided a guaranteed return. None of that is true. They are simply a prepackaged mix of stocks and bonds, and they come with no guarantees at all. So how did these flawed products become the default retirement option for millions of Americans? It's a wild story. Tony Robbins recounts the experience of a brilliant economist named David Bogle, who has multiple PhDs and has worked for Goldman Sachs and the World Bank. The Department of Labor hired him to study whether target date funds were a good retirement option. His research found they were riddled with flaws and that other safer options were better. But at the same time, the mutual fund industry paid for its own $2 million study, which, surprise, concluded that target date funds were the best thing since sliced bread. When it came time to present the findings, Dr. Babel's rigorous mathematical critique was essentially ignored. The industry got the government's seal of approval, and a 2006 law paved the way for target date funds to become the automatic choice in most 401k plans. The reality of this decision hit home hard in 2008. People who were in 2010 target date funds, just 2 years from their planned retirement, thought their money was safe and conservative. Instead, they saw gut-wrenching losses, with some of those funds dropping 20%, 30%, or even more. The set-it-and-forget-it promise turned into a nightmare. So why do so many financial experts still defend them? The argument is that target date funds are the lesser of two evils. Before they existed, people would make even worse mistakes on their own, like putting all their retirement savings into their own company's stock, remember Enron, or just letting their money sit in cash where it gets eaten by fees and inflation. From that perspective, a flawed plan is better than no plan at all. So, what's the path forward for someone who wants to do better? If you want extreme simplicity, an ultra-low-cost target date fund, like the ones from Vanguard, is an acceptable choice. It's not perfect, but it's a reasonable, lesser evil. However, for those reading this book, the goal isn't just to be average. The superior path is to learn true asset allocation. Instead of buying a prepackaged one-size-fits-all fund, you learn how to build your own portfolio using a mix of different low-cost index funds. This is the single most important skill of a successful investor, and it gives you real control over your financial future. It's time to move beyond set it and forget it and start designing a plan that truly fits your goals. Myth 7. I hate annuities, and you should too. You've probably seen the ads online. I hate annuities, and you should too. They promise to expose this terrible investment and, of course, sell you their stock-picking service instead. But here's a fascinating twist. When Ben Bernanke had to disclose his personal finances to become the chairman of the Federal Reserve, what were his two largest holdings? Annuities. So, what does the most powerful man in finance at the time know that the rest of us don't? The truth is, lumping all annuities into one bad category is a huge mistake. Tony Robbins tells the story of Dr. David Bogle, a brilliant Wharton professor who, instead of risking his money in the market, used a series of annuities to create a guaranteed, stress-free income for life. He has total peace of mind, knowing he'll never run out of money. This isn't a new idea. The concept of an annuity is actually 2,000 years old, dating back to the Roman Empire. You'd give a lump sum to a pool, and you'd get a guaranteed income payment for the rest of your life. But over the last 50 years, the financial industry has created some modern-day mutants. And there's one you absolutely need to know about: the variable annuity. This is the product that gives all annuities a bad name. In short, it's just a package of those same high-fee, underperforming mutual funds we've already talked about, but wrapped inside an even more expensive insurance product. We already know the average mutual fund costs you around 3.1% a year in total hidden charges. When you buy that fund inside a variable annuity, the insurance company adds its own layers of fees. There's a mortality and expense fee and administrative charges. When you add it all up, you're paying a grand total of around 4.7% a year. That's $4,700 for every $100,000 you invest, coming off the top before you make a single dime. After fees that high, there are often no gains left to even pay taxes on. So what's the solution? It's not to avoid all annuities. It's to know the difference between the good ones and the bad ones. There are other types of annuities, like fixed indexed annuities, that can provide a guaranteed lifetime income stream and 100% protection on your initial investment. And here's the real power move. You can combine one of these good annuities with a Roth IRA. Think about what that means. You get a guaranteed paycheck for life, and because it's in a Roth, that income stream is 100% tax-free. No matter how high tax rates go in the future, your income is protected. It's a legal, secure, tax-free income stream for life. So, while it's smart to be skeptical, don't let the marketing myths scare you away from a tool that, when used correctly, can be a cornerstone of a truly secure retirement. Myth 8. You gotta take huge risks to get big rewards. We've all heard the saying, no risk, no reward. We're taught that if you want to win big in the investment world, you have to be willing to gamble big. But what if that's just another myth designed to get you to risk your hard-earned money? Tony Robbins argues that the most successful investors on the planet think the exact opposite way. Their primary focus isn't on hitting home runs, it's on, as Richard Branson says, protecting the downside. When Branson launched Virgin Airways, it looked like a massive risk, going up against giants like British Airways. But what people didn't know was that he had a secret deal. If the airline failed, he could give the planes back. He risked very little for a massive reward. This is the insider's secret. Asymmetric risk-reward. It's about finding opportunities where you risk a little to potentially make a lot. Hedge fund manager Kyle Bass did the same thing when he bet against the housing market. He turned $30 million into $2 billion because he found a way to risk just 3 cents for every dollar of potential upside. This kind of insider thinking can get pretty creative. Tony Robbins tells this amazing story about how Kyle Bass taught his sons about risk. What did he do? He went out and bought $2 million worth of nickels. It sounds crazy, but at the time, the metal inside a U.S. nickel was actually worth more than 5 cents. He figured the government would eventually change the metal composition, making the old nickels rare and even more valuable. His downside? A nickel is always worth at least a nickel. His upside? A guaranteed risk-free return. It's about learning to see value where no one else is looking. So you might be thinking, that's great for billionaires, but what about me? In the past, the tools to get upside without the downside were reserved for the super wealthy. But that's changing. Tony Robbins details 3 specific strategies that are becoming more accessible. 1. Structured notes. This is basically a loan you make to a major bank. In return, they guarantee you'll get 100% of your money back after a set term. But if the market goes up during that time, you also get to participate in a big chunk of the gains. You get the upside, but you're protected from the downside. 2. Market-linked CDs. These are like a traditional CD but on steroids. They're FDIC insured, so your principal is safe. But instead of just a tiny interest rate, they also give you a percentage of the stock market's growth. You can make 20 times more than a regular CD with the same level of safety. 3. Fixed indexed annuities. When structured correctly, these insurance products can do something no other product can. They offer 100% principal protection and participation in market gains, but they can also be converted into a guaranteed paycheck for life. It's like creating your own personal pension. As we shatter these myths, one by one, the path to financial freedom gets clearer. We've learned that we don't have to try to beat the market, we don't have to pay insane fees, and we don't have to take huge risks to build real wealth. The game is absolutely winnable. You're no longer in the same leaky boat as everyone else, getting tossed around by the waves. You're learning how to build a safer, more comfortable boat, anchored in a harbor, ready to capture the rewards without risking it all. The blindfold is coming off. You're becoming an insider. Myth 9. The lies we tell ourselves. We've spent all this time tearing down the big financial myths, the lies that the industry tells us about fees, returns, and risk. But now we come to the final myth, and this one is the most important, because it's not a story someone else tells us. It's the story we tell ourselves. The ultimate thing that stops us from making progress isn't a rigged system or a lack of opportunity. It's our own limiting beliefs. It's the fear of failure, the feeling that we're not enough. So, instead of facing that fear, we create stories to justify where we are. We've all been there, struggling with something for years until one day, something snaps. You hit a threshold. You say, "That's it. Never again." That moment, that's a breakthrough, and it's the key to changing everything. So how do you create a breakthrough on command? Robbins breaks it down into a powerful 3-step formula. He says if you want to change your life, you have to change your strategy, your story, and your state. First, strategy. This one is obvious. You need a proven plan. That's what this whole journey is about. Finding the strategies that have worked for the most successful investors in history. Why reinvent the wheel when you can model what the best have already done? A good strategy can save you the most valuable resource of all, time. But strategy alone isn't enough. And that brings us to the second and most important element, your story. 80% of success in life is psychology, and only 20% is mechanics. This is why you can give someone the perfect strategy, and they still won't follow it. They're held back by a limiting story. A story that says, "I'm just not good with numbers," or "It takes money to make money," or "The system is rigged, so why bother?" These stories control our emotions, and our emotions drive our actions. With a disempowering story, failure is guaranteed. But if you change your story, you change your life. He uses this example from a Stanford health psychologist who used to warn people about the dangers of stress. But then, new research showed something amazing. Stress itself isn't the killer. It's the belief that stress is harmful that's dangerous. People who experienced a lot of stress but believed it was just their body rising to a challenge were no more likely to die than people with low stress. The story they told themselves about the stress literally changed their body's physical reaction to it. That's the power of your story. Finally, there's your state. It's almost impossible to have an empowering story if you're in a lousy physical and emotional state. When you're angry, you remember every bad thing that's ever happened. When you're in love, the world looks beautiful. Your state colors your reality. The fastest way to change your state is to radically change your physiology, the way you move, breathe, and hold your body. He talks about research from a Harvard professor on power posing. Just standing in a confident pose, like Wonder Woman with her hands on her hips, for 2 minutes can increase testosterone and decrease the stress hormone cortisol. Our bodies can change our minds. So it all comes down to this. We all get what we tolerate. It's time to stop tolerating the old excuses and the limiting stories. It's time to call bullshit on ourselves. When you feel that fear or that old story creeping in, change your physical state. Stand up tall. Put on some music that fires you up. Move your body. From that place of strength, you can rewrite your story. And with an empowered story and a proven strategy, a breakthrough isn't just possible, it's inevitable. What's the price of your dreams? Make the game winnable. If you had to put a number on what it would take to be financially free for the rest of your life, what would it be? $1 million? $5 million? Most of us pick a huge, intimidating number that feels so impossible, we never even start the journey. He tells this story about a young guy at one of his seminars who, when asked this question, proudly stands up and says, $1 billion. $1 billion. But when Tony Robbins started asking questions, it turned out the lifestyle this young man wanted, the private jets, the private island, didn't actually cost $1 billion. In fact, when they did the math, he could live like a billionaire for about 99% less than he thought. He didn't need $1 billion. He needed a plan. That's the problem with vague dreams. They're so big they paralyze us. This gets into some fascinating psychology. To actually achieve a big goal, your subconscious mind, the part of you that keeps your heart beating without you thinking about it, has to believe it's possible. If your conscious mind keeps saying, "There's no way in hell I can make $1 billion," that goal gets rejected before you even take the first step. To put these big numbers in perspective, Tony Robbins uses a great analogy. How long ago was 1,000,000 seconds? The answer is about 12 days. Now, how long ago was 1,000,000,000 seconds? It wasn't a few months or even a few years. It was 32 years ago. That's the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. They're not even in the same universe. When we realize that the lifestyle we dream of probably costs a lot less than we think, the game suddenly becomes winnable. So how do we make it winnable? By breaking it down. Instead of having one giant, scary number, Tony Robbins lays out 5 distinct levels of financial dreams. This is a total game changer. 1. Financial security. This is the first, most important base camp. It's the point where your 5 core expenses, your mortgage, utilities, food, transportation, and basic insurance, are paid for life without you ever having to work for them again. For most people, this number is shockingly achievable. 2. Financial vitality. This is security plus a little extra. It covers all your basic needs plus half of your fun money for things like new clothes, dining out, and small luxuries. 3. Financial independence. This is the big one for many. It's the point where your investment income completely covers your current lifestyle. You are now officially independent of work. You work because you want to, not because you have to. 4. Financial freedom. This takes it a step further. It's everything you have today, plus 2 or 3 significant luxuries you've always dreamed of. Maybe it's a vacation home, a boat, or the ability to make a major charitable donation every year. 5. Absolute financial freedom. This is the ultimate dream, where money is no longer a factor in any decision you make. By breaking it down like this, you create a real target. You can aim for security first, celebrate that win, and then move on to the next level. It turns an impossible dream into a series of achievable goals. But having a plan is one thing. Making it happen is another. Turning any dream into reality comes down to 3 steps. First, you have to unleash your hunger and focus. You get so obsessed with your goal that your brain starts noticing opportunities everywhere. It's like when you buy a new car, and suddenly you see that same car all over the road. Your focus determines what you see. Second, you have to take massive and effective action. Desire isn't enough. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes, but you also need a smart plan, a good map for your journey. And third, you have to be open to what he calls grace. Some call it luck, some call it fate. It's those moments of serendipity when things just seem to fall into place. When you do your part, it's amazing how the universe seems to conspire to help you. So the question isn't whether you can achieve your dreams. It's whether you're willing to define them, make a real plan, and then go after them with everything you've got. What's your plan? When it comes to your financial life, it's so easy to look around and compare yourself to your friends, your family, or your colleagues. But this is a losing game from the start. A group of childhood friends who all grew up in the same neighborhood but ended up with vastly different financial lives. A Wall Streeter, a photographer, a home builder. Who was winning? The truth is, all of them were, because they were living life on their own terms. An Olympic track race. The runners are staggered at the start, and from the stands, it looks like the person in the outer lane has a huge head start. But it's an illusion. They all have to run the same distance. Life is the same way. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It doesn't matter where you start. All that matters is that you focus on your own path and your own plan. So how do you create that plan? This is where we move from mindset to mechanics. Tony Robbins introduces a simple tool, a wealth calculator app, designed to create a personalized financial blueprint. All you have to do is answer 6 simple questions about where you are now and what you're committed to doing. The app then does all the heavy lifting, building a plan based on variables that you control, like your savings rate and your expected rate of return. It's designed with conservative assumptions built in, so the plan it generates is realistic and, most importantly, achievable. It's about taking the guesswork out of your future. This is where the rubber meets the road. A plan is only good if it works in the real world. To prove that it does, Tony Robbins shares 3 powerful case studies of people from completely different starting points. First, there's Marco, a young engineer in his early 30s. He's making a good salary, but feels like he's drowning in $20,000 of student loan debt. He feels trapped, but after creating a plan, he realizes he can be completely debt-free in just 7 years. Better yet, he discovers a clear path to becoming financially independent by age 60, a full 5 years earlier than he'd ever imagined. He went from feeling hopeless about debt to having a concrete plan for freedom. Then, there's Catherine, a successful businesswoman who assumed she was decades away from being financially secure. When she runs her numbers, she gets a huge shock. She discovers that her business is so valuable that she could sell it today and be financially secure right now. She was so much closer than she thought, but had no idea, because she never took the time to look at the real numbers. Finally, there's the story of Angela, who, at 48 years old, is starting with 0 savings. She feels like she's hopelessly late to the party. Her initial plan shows it will take her until she's 72 to reach financial security. It's discouraging. But then they factor in one thing she'd forgotten: Social Security. By adding that future income to her plan, she shaves a full decade off her timeline. Suddenly, financial security is within reach by age 62. The impossible became possible. These stories show that no matter where you're starting, a clear plan can change everything. But what if you run your numbers and you're disappointed? What if the timeline feels too long? Disappointment can be the ultimate fuel for change. It can be the kick in the pants you need to get serious. He tells a personal story about being on a yacht with a group of millionaire movie moguls when he was 30 years old. He felt totally out of place and inadequate, but instead of letting that feeling defeat him, he used it as inspiration. It made him realize how much more was possible and drove him to sharpen his game. The key takeaway is this: most people overestimate what they can do in a year, and they massively underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade or two. Trust the process, stick to your plan, and let the power of compounding work its magic over time. Speed it up. 1. Save more and invest the difference. So, you've done the hard work, you've looked at the numbers, you've figured out the price of your dreams, and you have a real, tangible plan. That's a huge victory, and you should take a moment to really let that sink in. But now, what if we could take that plan and put it in the fast lane? What if you could reclaim years of your life, not just an extra hour in your day, but an extra 5 or even 10 years of financial freedom? That's what this is all about. It's time to speed things up. The first and most powerful strategy to do that is simple: save more and invest the difference. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Save more? I'm stretched to the limit as it is. Before you check out, remember the power of changing your story. And also, remember that there are massive savings hiding in plain sight, in the biggest expenses of your life. Let's start with the biggest one for most people: your home. When you get a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, about 80% of your early payments go straight to interest. That means a $500,000 house will actually cost you around $1 million by the time you're done. But there's a simple way to fight back that doesn't involve refinancing. The strategy is to make small, early principal payments. For example, on a $270,000 loan, your payment might be around $1,600. The trick is to write a second, much smaller check for next month's principal, which might only be about $270. You're just paying a small part of your loan a few weeks early. If you do this consistently, you can pay off a 30-year mortgage in about 15 years. That's $500,000 back in your pocket on $1 million home. Think about what that does for your financial freedom timeline. Beyond the mortgage, where else can you find savings? Think about your car. Tony Robbins tells a story about his son who was paying a fortune to lease a high-end BMW. It was an ego boost, but that 1,200 monthly payment could have covered a mortgage. He eventually realized the joy he got from the car wasn't worth the financial strain, so he swapped it for something more economical and put the difference toward his future. It's not about depriving yourself, it's about making a conscious choice. If that luxury car is truly worth it to you, great. But if you're not getting to your goals fast enough, it's an area worth rethinking. This isn't about a restrictive budget. It's about a spending plan. It's about consciously deciding where your money goes to bring you the most joy. This applies to the small things, too. You've probably heard of the latte factor, a term coined by financial expert David Bogle. It's a metaphor for all those small daily purchases that we don't think twice about. The fancy coffee, the bottled water. That $4 latte every day might not seem like much, but over 40 years, it can add up to over $500,000 in lost savings and compound growth. At the end of the day, it comes down to being mindful. Tony Robbins suggests a simple exercise. Make a list of your recurring expenses, and on a scale of 1 to 10, rate how much joy each one really brings you. Then compare that feeling to the feeling of absolute financial freedom. You'll quickly see which expenses are worth keeping and which ones are just habits that are holding you back. It's not about sacrifice. It's about making deliberate choices that align with the life you truly want to build. Speed it up. 2. Earn more and invest the difference. If you want to put your financial plan on the fast track, saving more is a great start. But the second strategy, earning more, is the one that has truly unlimited potential. But how do you do it? Tony Robbins shares that the biggest secret he ever learned came from his first mentor, a man named Jim Rohn. The answer wasn't about getting lucky or finding a hot stock. As Jim Rohn said, to have more, you simply have to become more. The key to earning more is to become more valuable in the marketplace. He said, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. That single idea is the foundation for creating real wealth. It's not about the time you put in, it's about the value you create in that time. Now it's easy to say, but the economy is tough. Jobs are being automated. And that's true. The world is changing faster than ever. Just like the Industrial Revolution replaced farm jobs, technology is disrupting jobs today. The solution isn't to fight it. It's to retool yourself. It's about adapting and learning the skills that are valuable now. He makes a powerful point. During the Great Recession, when unemployment was at 10%, the unemployment rate for people earning over $100,000 a year was only 1%. Why? Because they had developed skills that were in high demand. The jobs are out there, but we have to make ourselves the people who are qualified to fill them. So what does adding more value look like in the real world? It's not about your job title. It's about your creativity and your commitment. There's a teacher in South Korea named Kim Ki-hoon. Instead of just teaching the 30 kids in his classroom, he asked, "How can I help millions?" He started putting his innovative lectures online for a few dollars an hour. Today, he earns $4 million a year. He didn't change his profession. He changed the scale of his contribution. Then there's the story of Daniela, a young woman working in a corporate marketing department. She was hungry, so she started teaching herself new skills, marketing, social media, and helping her colleagues. Eventually, she realized she was doing the work of 4 people. So she went to her boss, laid out a plan to save the company money, and proved she could do a better job than all of them combined. The result? She doubled her salary. You've probably heard of the GoPro camera. It was invented by a surfer named Nick Woodman. He wasn't trying to build a billion-dollar company. He was just trying to solve his own problem: how to take cool photos while riding a wave. He found a way to add value to millions of people who shared his passion, and in the process, became a billionaire. And finally, there's Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. She was getting ready for a party and didn't have the right underwear. So she took a pair of scissors to her pantyhose and invented a whole new category of clothing. She invested her life savings of $5,000 and faced 1,000 no's, but she kept going because she was solving a problem she knew millions of women had. All of these stories prove the same point. Your income is not limited by your job, but by your creativity and willingness to add value. And here's where it gets really exciting. When you find a way to earn more, you can take that extra income and invest the difference. Finding a way to earn an extra $500 a month or $60,000 a year when invested and compounded over 40 years can turn into $1.5 million. Find a way to earn an extra $1,000 a month, and that's $3 million in your nest egg. This is how you truly accelerate your journey to financial freedom. It all starts with becoming more valuable. Speed it up. 3. Reduce fees and taxes and invest the difference. We've talked about saving more and earning more to speed up your financial plan. Now we come to the third and maybe most overlooked strategy. It's not what you earn that matters, it's what you keep. This is all about getting more money out of your investments by cutting down on two of the biggest wealth killers out there: fees and taxes. Remember the story of the 3 friends who all started with the same amount of money and got the same 7% return? The only difference was their fees. The friend who paid just 1% in fees ended up with nearly twice as much money as the friend who paid 3%. That's the power of keeping your costs low. It can literally shave a decade off the time it takes to reach your goals. But as damaging as fees are, there's an even bigger predator out there: taxes. The average American pays over 54 cents of every dollar they earn to some form of tax. Income tax, property tax, sales tax, you name it. Then, after that, another chunk goes to paying interest on things like credit cards and mortgages. When all is said and done, you might be left with less than 30 cents on the dollar to pay for your actual life and somehow save for the future. It's a massive headwind. Being smart about taxes isn't about being unpatriotic. It's about not leaving a tip for Uncle Sam. As one famous judge said, there's no law that says you have to pay more than you legally owe. So how do you become more tax efficient? You don't need to be a tax expert, but you do need to understand a few simple concepts. There are basically 3 types of taxes on your investments. There's ordinary income tax, which is the highest rate. Then there are capital gains taxes. If you hold an investment for more than a year before selling, you pay a much lower long-term capital gains rate. If you sell in less than a year, you get hit with the short-term capital gains rate, which is just as high as your regular income tax. Here's why this is a game changer. An investment with an 8% return, after being hit with high mutual fund fees and high short-term taxes, might only give you a real return of 3%. At that rate, it would take you 24 years to double your money. But if you take that same 8% return in a low-cost, tax-efficient investment like an index fund, your real return is closer to 7.5%. At that rate, you double your money in just 9.6 years. That's the power of tax efficiency. The simplest way to do this is to use tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k, an IRA, or especially a Roth, where your money can grow and compound without the taxman taking a bite every year. So let's recap the 3 strategies to put your financial plan in the fast lane. 1. Save more and invest the difference. 2. Earn more by adding more value and invest the difference. 3. And reduce your fees and taxes and invest the difference. By doing these 3 things, you take back control. You stop letting your money slowly leak out of your account and instead put every possible dollar to work for your future. It's how you turn from a passenger into the driver of your own financial destiny. Speed it up. 4. Get better returns and speed your way to victory. We've talked about saving more, earning more, and cutting fees to speed up your financial plan. But now we get to the really exciting stuff: getting better returns. The old myth says that if you want big rewards, you have to take huge risks. But the greatest investors on the planet do the exact opposite. They live by a secret called asymmetric risk-reward. It's a fancy term for a simple, powerful idea. Find opportunities where you risk a little to potentially make a lot. Tony Robbins shares the story of Richard Branson launching Virgin Airways. It looked like a crazy gamble, but Branson had a secret deal. If the airline failed, he could give the planes back. He protected his downside. Legendary investor Tudor Jones does the same thing. He looks for what he calls a 5-to-1 investment. He's willing to risk $1 only if he believes he can make 5. This way, he can be wrong 4 out of 5 times and still not lose money. It's about setting up the game so you can win. So besides finding these special opportunities, what's the core strategy for getting better returns while managing risk? According to every single expert Tony Robbins interviewed, from Nobel Prize winners to billionaire hedge fund managers, it comes down to 2 things: asset allocation and diversification. Asset allocation is simply deciding where to put your money. How much in stocks, how much in bonds, how much in real estate, and so on. It is the single most important skill an investor can have, and it's what we'll be diving deep into later on. The impact of getting a better return is staggering. There's a simple financial shortcut called the Rule of 72. It tells you how long it takes to double your money. You just divide the number 72 by your interest rate. So, at a 4% return, it takes 18 years to double your money. But if you can get a 10% return, it takes just over 7 years. Think about that. That's the difference between reaching your goals in your early 40s versus your late 50s. It's a massive accelerator. So, where do you find these opportunities for better, smarter returns? Sometimes they come from seeing a major trend before anyone else. The grandmother of Tony Robbins' wife, Hilda, was widowed and deeply lonely for years. Her health was declining, and the family had to find a retirement community for her. After a long search, they found a place that was incredible, more like a 5-star resort than a nursing home. And an amazing thing happened. At 88 years old, Hilda started a new life. She fell in love with a 92-year-old gentleman, and they had 4 wonderful years together. After he passed, she met someone new at his funeral. Her last decade was filled with joy and companionship she never expected. This experience opened Robbins's eyes to a huge need and a huge opportunity. With 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day, the demand for high-quality senior living is a demographic inevitability. So, he had his advisor find a way to invest in a company that builds and manages these exact types of high-end facilities. It was an investment that aligned with his values and was backed by a massive trend. Now, that specific deal was for accredited investors, but you don't have to be a billionaire to use the same logic. There are publicly traded real estate investment trusts, or REITs, that focus on senior housing. You can buy shares in them and get a piece of that same trend. The point is to find opportunities where a real human need and a demographic shift create that asymmetric risk-reward. Speeding up your journey to financial freedom comes down to a few key things: finding ways to save more, earn more, cut fees and taxes, and get better returns. When you start actively looking for these opportunities, you'll be amazed at what you find. A great fiduciary advisor can also help you spot investments where the potential rewards truly outweigh the risks. Speed it up. 5. Change your life and lifestyle for the better. We've covered 4 powerful ways to accelerate your financial plan: saving more, earning more, cutting fees, and getting better returns. But the 5th and final strategy is the most radical of all. It's about changing your life to change your lifestyle. It's about physically relocating. I know what you're probably thinking. Move? That's crazy. My job, my family, my friends are all here. But what if that one decision could get you to your financial goals a decade sooner? What if you could instantly give yourself a 10%, 20%, or even 30% raise, not by earning more, but by simply living somewhere with a lower cost of living or a better tax environment? Why wait until retirement to move to that place you've always dreamed of? Why not do it now while you're young enough to enjoy it and give your family a better quality of life? This idea might seem extreme until you hear a real-world story of it in action. Tony Robbins shares his own personal journey with this. For his entire life, he was a California guy through and through. But a few years ago, California raised its income tax rate yet again. When he did the math, his total effective tax rate, including federal, state, payroll, and all the rest, was a staggering 62%. He was left with just 38 cents of every dollar he earned. That was his tipping point. So, he and his wife, Sage, decided to vote with their feet. They went on a treasure hunt for a new home base and ended up falling in love with Palm Beach, Florida, a state with zero income tax. The home they bought was much more expensive than they'd ever planned, but here's the unbelievable financial outcome. The money they now save every year on state taxes is enough to pay off their entire new multi-million-dollar home in just 6 years. He's literally getting a dream home for free just by changing his zip code, all while massively upgrading his quality of life. That story is about moving states, but you can take this idea even further. What if you thought globally? There are beautiful, vibrant, and incredibly affordable places all over the world where you could cut your cost of living in half, or even more. Tony Robbins talks about his son exploring Costa Rica and finding a huge community of English-speaking expats who discovered their money went further and their lives were richer. Think about it. A move like that isn't just a financial strategy, it's an adventure. It's a chance to give your family the experience of a new culture and a new language. It's about transforming your life, not just your balance sheet. So, let's recap the journey we've been on. You've taken 3 huge steps toward financial freedom. Step 1. You decided to become an investor, not just a consumer, by committing to your freedom fund. Step 2. You've become an insider by shattering the financial myths that hold most people back. Step 3. You've made the game winnable by figuring out the real price of your dreams and creating a plan. And you now have 5 powerful strategies to speed that plan up. What's next? Now that you have money to invest and a plan to follow, the big question remains: where exactly do you put your money? It's time to learn about the single most important investment decision you'll ever make. It's time to talk about asset allocation. Make the most important investment decision of your life. The ultimate bucket list, asset allocation. So, you've made the decision to become an investor. You've committed to saving, you've learned to avoid the financial industry's biggest lies, and you've created a real plan. But now comes the most important investment decision of your entire life. Where do you actually put your money? This is what the pros call asset allocation. And according to David Swensen, the legendary investor who grew Yale's endowment from $1 billion to over $23 billion, asset allocation is responsible for more than 100% of your investment returns. How is that possible? Because while things like picking stocks and timing the market can often cost you money in fees and bad bets, a smart asset allocation strategy protects you and sets you up for long-term success. It's how you not only become wealthy, but also how you stay wealthy. So why is this so critical? Tony Robbins shares a stark warning from another investing giant, Ray Dalio. Dalio says that whatever you invest in, stocks, real estate, anything, it's almost certain that at some point in your lifetime, it will lose 50% to 70% of its value. That's a terrifying thought. We've all heard stories from 2008 of people who had all their money in real estate or the stock market and got completely wiped out. The old saying, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," is more than just a cliche. It's the most important rule for financial survival. Proper diversification across different types of assets is what protects you from those devastating losses. It's what lets you sleep at night. So how do you do it? Tony Robbins breaks it down into a simple but powerful framework. Think of your money as going into 2 big buckets. The first, and most important, is your security peace of mind bucket. This is the core of your financial life. It's where you put the money you absolutely cannot afford to lose. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's the slow and steady turtle that ultimately wins the race. So what goes in here? Cash. You need an emergency fund, something liquid for unexpected events. Bonds and CDs. These are essentially IOUs from governments or corporations that provide a fixed, predictable return. We're talking about the safer kind here. Your home. Your primary residence belongs in this bucket. It's a sanctuary, not something to speculate with. Pensions and certain annuities. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, that's pure security. And certain types of modern annuities can act like a personal pension, giving you a guaranteed income for life. Structured notes and market-linked CDs. These are some of the insider tools. They're products offered by major banks that give you 100% protection on your principal while still letting you participate in some of the stock market's gains. You get the upside without the downside risk. The goal of this bucket is right in the name: security and peace of mind. It's the foundation that allows you to take calculated risks elsewhere. A big piece of that security bucket is bonds. Now, bonds have gotten a bad rap lately with interest rates being so low, but they are still a critical part of a balanced portfolio. You have U.S. Treasuries, which are considered the safest on the planet because they're backed by the government. There are corporate bonds, which are IOUs from companies. The risk and reward here depend on the financial health of the company. And there are municipal bonds, issued by states and cities, which have the huge advantage of often being tax-free. Understanding these basic building blocks is the first step. You don't have to be an expert, but knowing what tools are available is key. In the end, asset allocation is about creating the right mix of these different assets to match your personal goals and your stage of life. It's the one skill that can truly set you up for a lifetime of financial success. Playing to win, the risk growth bucket. We've talked a lot about the security bucket, the safe, steady foundation of your financial life. But now let's talk about the fun part, the part that gets all the attention, the risk growth bucket. This is where the magic can happen. It's sexy, it's exciting, and it's where you have the potential for much higher returns. But you have to remember the first word in the name is risk. Growth is not guaranteed, but risk is. The greatest investors know that markets run in cycles. What goes up will come down. Ray Dalio famously said that whatever your favorite investment is, you can count on it dropping 50% to 70% at some point in your life. This bucket is where you play to win, but you have to go in with your eyes wide open. So, what are the tools we have in this high-octane part of our portfolio? There are several key asset classes to consider. 1. Equities. This is just a fancy word for stocks. You can own individual companies or, more commonly, a bundle of them through things like index funds or ETFs. 2. High-yield bonds. You might know these by their old name, junk bonds. They offer higher interest payments because you're taking on a lot more risk that the company might not be able to pay you back. 3. Real estate. This isn't your primary home, which is in your security bucket. This is investment real estate, things like rental properties or, more accessibly, REITs, which are real estate investment trusts that trade like stocks and let you own a piece of large commercial properties. 4. Commodities. Think gold, silver, oil. Gold has traditionally been seen as a safe haven, but as its price swings show, it can be very volatile. It offers no income, so you're purely betting that its price will go up. 5-point currencies. This is pure speculation on the value of one country's money versus another. It's a game for the pros and not for the faint of heart. 6. Collectibles. This includes things like art, wine, and classic cars. It requires very specialized knowledge. 7. Riskier structured notes. Remember the structured notes with 100% principal protection? There are other versions that offer you a much bigger piece of the market's upside in exchange for only partial protection on the downside. Higher risk, higher potential reward. So how do you put all these pieces together? To give us a blueprint, Tony Robbins shares the personal portfolio recommendation from one of the greatest institutional investors of all time, David Swensen, the man who manages Yale University's multi-billion-dollar endowment. His model for individuals is elegant and simple, using just 6 types of index funds. But what's shocking to many is the allocation. He recommends putting 70% of your portfolio in the risk to growth bucket. That's aggressive. His logic is that over long periods, equities have historically provided superior returns. His recommended mix is highly diversified across U.S. stocks, international stocks, emerging markets, and real estate. The other 30% is in the security bucket, split between regular treasury bonds and inflation-protected bonds, to protect against both deflation and inflation. When this portfolio was backtested, it consistently beat the overall stock market with less volatility. It's a master's blueprint for long-term growth. But here's the most important question. Is David Swensen's aggressive 70-30 split right for you? Your personal allocation depends entirely on your own situation, and most importantly, your true emotional tolerance for risk. Imagine you're on a game show. Would you take a guaranteed $1,000 in cash, or would you take a 5% chance at winning $100,000? There's no right answer, but your gut reaction tells you a lot about your personality. It's easy to think you have a high tolerance for risk when things are going well, but most of us don't know how we'll really react until we've taken a significant financial hit. We are biologically wired to feel the pain of a loss much more intensely than the pleasure of a win. This is why it's so critical to be honest with yourself about what you can truly handle. So, the moment of truth. What's your number? How much of your money will you put in the security bucket, and how much will you put in the risk growth bucket? Is it 50-50? 60-16? Is it the aggressive 70-30 like David Swenson? The most important thing is to choose a mix that not only helps you reach your financial goals, but also, as financial leader Mary Callahan Erdoes says, lets you sleep well at night. This is your decision, your plan, and your key to peace of mind. The dream bucket. So far, we've talked about the security bucket for safety and the risk or growth bucket for building wealth. But there's a third, equally important bucket that often gets ignored. The dream bucket. This isn't about some far-off retirement goal. This is for right now. The dream bucket is where you set aside money for what Tony Robbins calls strategic splurges, the things that add juice to your life and keep you motivated on this journey. It's the new car, the season tickets, the trip you've always wanted to take. So many people have a lot of money, but not much of a lifestyle because they forget to enjoy it along the way. This bucket is the cure for that. And what's the ultimate dream you can fund from this bucket? Often, it's not something for yourself, but something you do for others. The most fulfilling splurges are often acts of giving. Tony Robbins shares two incredibly powerful stories to drive this point home. The first is about buying his mother a beachfront condo she fell in love with. He describes handing her the keys and the look of astonished, tearful joy on her face as one of the best moments of his life. The second story is even bigger. He made a promise to an entire class of fifth graders from a tough neighborhood that he would pay for their college education if they just kept up their grades, stayed out of trouble, and most importantly, did community service. He made a legally binding commitment before he even knew how he would pay for it all. Why? Because as he says, if you want to take the island, you have to burn your boats. Making that commitment unleashed the creativity and drive to make it happen. These stories show that giving isn't something you do after you're rich. It's a mindset that creates abundance. So how do you actually fill this dream bucket without wrecking your long-term plan? There are three main strategies. 1. From a windfall. If you get an unexpected bonus or inheritance, you can put a piece of it directly into your dream bucket. 2. From your profits. When you have a big win in your risk growth bucket, take some of those profits off the table. Tony Robbins suggests a 1/3 rule. Put 1/3 back into security, reinvest 1/3 into risk growth, and put 1/3 into your dream bucket to enjoy today. 3. From your savings. This is the most consistent way. As you use the speeded-up strategies to save more money by cutting fees, earning more, or being tax efficient, you can allocate a percentage of those new savings to go directly into your dream bucket. This way, you're funding your dreams without taking a single penny from the money already earmarked for your financial freedom. A story that perfectly captures the whole point of the dream bucket. It's about a frugal couple who finally go on the Caribbean cruise of a lifetime. To save money, they pack boxes of cheese and crackers and eat them in their cabin for every meal while everyone else enjoys these magnificent buffets. On the very last night, they decide to splurge and have one big fancy dinner. After they've eaten their fill, they ask for the bill. The waiter looks at them, completely stunned, and says, "What bill? Didn't you know the meals come with the trip?" The meals come with the trip. Don't be so focused on saving for the future that you forget to enjoy the journey. That's what the dream bucket is for. It's about making sure you don't live your life on cheese and crackers when there's a feast waiting for you. Timing is everything. Everyone knows the secret to great comedy is timing. But what about investing? We're often led to believe that the secret to getting rich is knowing when to get in and when to get out of the market. The problem is, as humans, we are terrible at it. Our emotions make us do the exact wrong thing at the exact wrong time. As economist Burton Malkiel pointed out, more money flowed into the stock market than ever before right at the peak of the dot-com bubble in 2000. And when did the money come pouring out? At the absolute bottom of the market in 2002, and again during the financial crisis in 2008. We buy high out of greed and sell low out of fear. It's a recipe for disaster. But what about the pros, you might ask? Surely they can time the market. Tony Robbins shares a fascinating story that shows why even this is an illusion. He was fortunate enough to get a heads up from the legendary trader Tudor Jones about the coming 2008 crash, which allowed him to warn his clients. It was an incredible, accurate prediction. But a few years later, in 2010, another warning about a market drop proved to be wrong. Why? Because no one, not even the best in the world, could have predicted that the Federal Reserve would step in and print an unprecedented $4 trillion to prop up the economy. The game board was changed by an unpredictable force. This proves the point. Trying to perfectly time the market is a fool's errand. So, if we can't time the market, what's the solution? It's to take your emotions out of the equation and use a disciplined, automated system. There are 3 key strategies for this. 1. Dollar cost averaging. This is a classic. Instead of trying to guess the perfect moment to invest, you simply invest a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, say, every month. When the market is down, your fixed amount buys you more shares. When the market is up, it buys you fewer. Over time, this strategy turns market volatility into your friend, lowering your average cost per share. Most 401k plans do this for you automatically. 2. Rebalancing. This one takes discipline. It means that on a regular basis, maybe once or twice a year, you look at your portfolio and bring it back to your original target allocation. If your stocks have soared and are now taking up too much of your portfolio, you have to sell some of those winners and buy more of your underperforming, safer assets. It feels counterintuitive to sell what's working, but this discipline forces you to sell high and buy low, locking in gains and preventing you from getting too exposed to risk. 3. Tax loss. Harvesting. This is a smart insider technique. It simply means that when you rebalance, you can use some of your investment losses to offset your investment gains, which lowers your tax bill and increases your real take-home return. At the end of the day, a disciplined system will always beat emotional, reactive decisions. By understanding the principles of asset allocation and using automated strategies like dollar cost averaging and rebalancing, you can build a portfolio that thrives over the long term without ever having to predict the future. You've now learned the rules, you've made a plan, and you know the importance of asset allocation. You're no longer just guessing. You're using a time-tested system for success. Upside without the downside. Create a lifetime income plan. Invincible, unsinkable, unconquerable. The all-seasons strategy. Great investors are often forged in the fires of economic chaos. Tony Robbins tells the story of Ray Dalio, one of the greatest investors of our time. Dalio's entire philosophy was shaped by the turbulent 1970s and one shocking historical moment. Imagine sitting in your living room one night when President Nixon interrupts the broadcast to announce that the US dollar will no longer be backed by gold. Dalio, a young clerk on the stock exchange, thought for sure the market would crash the next day. Instead, it soared. That counterintuitive event taught him his most important lesson. Expect surprises. It set him on a lifelong quest to build a portfolio that could survive anything. And what he created is nothing short of the holy grail for investors. Robbins reveals the incredible historical performance of Dalio's strategy. Imagine a portfolio that has delivered nearly 10% annual returns for the last 40 years. A portfolio that made money in 85% of those years, and in its worst year, 2008, when the world was melting down, it lost less than 4%. This isn't a fantasy. It's the result of a completely different way of thinking about investing. So, how did he do it? Dalio's success comes from a relentless quest to find the truth. He created his famed all-weather strategy not for his hedge fund clients, but for his own family's trust fund. He wanted to create an investment plan that would work long after he was gone, no matter what the future held. This led him to two groundbreaking insights that shatter conventional wisdom. First, he realized that a traditional, balanced 50-50 portfolio of stocks and bonds is dangerously unbalanced. Why? Because stocks are about 3 times more volatile or risky than bonds. That 50-50 split of your money actually means about 95% of your risk is in stocks. If stocks crash, your whole portfolio goes down with them. Second, he simplified the entire economic world down to just 4 possible seasons that can affect your investments. 1. Higher than expected inflation, prices rise. 2. Lower than expected inflation or deflation. 3. Higher than expected economic growth. 4. Lower than expected economic growth. Dalio's genius was to stop trying to predict which season is coming next, and instead build a portfolio that has 25% of its risk prepared for each of those 4 seasons, all the time. It's a portfolio that is truly ready for anything. So, what is the actual recipe? After much convincing, Tony Robbins got Ray Dalio to share a simplified version that any of us can use. This is the blueprint for the all-seasons portfolio. Here it is, 30% in stocks, like an S&P 500 index fund. 55% in bonds, split between long-term and intermediate-term U.S. government bonds. 7.5% in gold, 7.5% in commodities. It's a mix that looks very different from what most financial advisors recommend. It's heavy on bonds to balance out the high volatility of stocks, and it includes gold and commodities to protect against periods of high inflation. It's not about hoping for the best. It's about being prepared for the worst, while still capturing incredible returns. It's a game-changing strategy from one of the greatest financial minds on the planet. It's time to thrive. Storm-proof returns and unrivaled results. So, we have the recipe for the all-seasons portfolio from one of the greatest investors of our time, Ray Dalio. It sounds great in theory, but the big question is, does it actually work? Tony Robbins reveals that he had a team of analysts stress test this strategy all the way back to the 1920s, through every imaginable economic storm. The results are nothing short of breathtaking. Over the last 30 years, this portfolio has delivered an average return of nearly 10% a year. It made money in 86% of those years, and its worst loss was a tiny 3.9%. And that was in 2008, when the rest of the market was down by 37%. Think about that. Through the Great Depression, World War II, the dot-com bust, and the 2008 financial crisis, this portfolio has not only survived, but thrived. It's the definition of a storm-proof investment strategy. Now, whenever something looks this good, the critics come out. And the biggest question they ask is, what happens when interest rates go up? Won't all those bonds in the portfolio get crushed? It's a fair question, but it misses the point of the all-seasons philosophy. It's not a bet on one particular outcome. It's designed to be prepared for all outcomes. And history backs this up. During the high inflation, rising rate decade of the 1970s, when interest rates were skyrocketing, the all-seasons portfolio still cranked out an average annual return of almost 10%. It passed the test with flying colors. But here's what might be the most important advantage of this strategy, and it has nothing to do with numbers. It's about human psychology. Its greatest benefit is that it protects you from your own worst enemy, fear. He tells the story of the legendary Magellan Fund, run by Peter Lynch, which delivered an incredible 29% average annual return for over a decade. But a study by Fidelity found that the average investor in that fund actually lost money. How is that possible? Because they couldn't stomach the volatility. They would panic and sell when the fund was down, and then, full of regret, buy back in after it had already gone up. Most of us think we have nerves of steel, but would you really be able to watch your life savings drop by 50% or 60% and not sell? The all-seasons portfolio, with its smooth and steady ride, provides what Tony Robbins calls emotional scaffolding. It keeps you in the game because it prevents the kind of catastrophic losses that cause people to make disastrous emotional decisions. So, the proof is in the pudding. We have a powerful, proven strategy that has stood the test of time. The ball is now in your court. You can take this blueprint and implement it yourself using low-cost index funds. Or, if you want help, you can work with a fiduciary advisor to put it in place for you. Tony Robbins points to automated services like the one on the Stronghold Financial website that can analyze your current portfolio for free and show you how it compares to the all-seasons approach. Whatever path you choose, the key is to take action. You are now armed with one of the most powerful investment strategies on the planet. You have a plan that can give you not only financial returns, but also what might be the most valuable asset of all: peace of mind. Freedom. Creating your lifetime income plan. When we think about investing, what's the end goal? Most people say growth or a big nest egg, but we're focused on the wrong thing. He uses a powerful analogy. Planning for retirement is like climbing Mount Everest. Getting to the top, accumulating all that wealth, is an incredible achievement. But that's only half the battle. The most dangerous part of the climb is getting back down. And in the financial world, getting down the mountain means turning your assets into a reliable, lifelong income stream. You can't spend a stock certificate or a gold bar. You can only spend cash. The real goal, the ultimate outcome that matters, isn't just a pile of assets. It's income. Income is freedom. This is more critical today than ever before because the old retirement playbook is broken. For one, we're living longer than anyone could have imagined. Lifespans are pushing toward 90 or even 100. That old 4% rule for withdrawals. The Wall Street Journal ran an article titled, "Say Goodbye to the 4% Rule." It just doesn't work anymore in a world of low interest rates and longer lives. But the biggest danger, the financial world's dirty little secret, is something called the sequence of returns risk. This is a game of pure luck that can destroy your retirement. Tony Robbins tells the story of two people, John and Susan. They both retire at 65 with the exact same amount of money, $500,000. They use the exact same withdrawal strategy, and over the next 25 years, they get the exact same average rate of return from the market. But John gets unlucky. He experiences a few bad market years right at the beginning of his retirement. Those early losses are devastating because he's withdrawing money from a shrinking pot. By age 83, he's completely out of money. Susan, on the other hand, gets lucky. Her bad years come later. By the time she's 89, she's not only withdrawn nearly $1 million in income, she still has over $1.6 million left in her account. Same money, same plan, same average returns. One goes broke, the other thrives. The only difference was the timing of the market, something no one can control. So how do you protect yourself from that terrifying game of chance? How do you guarantee you have an income for life? The solution lies in a financial tool that often gets a bad rap: annuities. Tony Robbins talked to some of the most respected financial minds in the world, like Dr. David Bogle from the Wharton School and Dr. Jeffrey Brown, an advisor to the White House and the World Bank. These aren't salespeople. They're academics who have spent their lives studying this problem, and they both concluded that for their own personal retirements, they used annuities to create a guaranteed income stream and peace of mind. Why do annuities have a bad reputation? Because they're often sold the wrong way. A broker might frame them as a low-return investment, and of course they look terrible compared to stocks. But that's not their purpose. A study found that when you describe an annuity as a low-return investment, only 20% of people are interested. But when you describe it accurately, as a tool that provides a guaranteed income for the rest of your life, just like Social Security, their appeal skyrockets to over 70%. It's about getting a paycheck you can't outlive. It's income insurance. And as we'll find out, modern versions of these products can offer incredible benefits, like participating in the market's gains without any of the downside losses. It's the solution to the sequence of returns risk and the key to turning your nest egg into a truly secure retirement. Time to win. Your income is the outcome. For a long time, annuities have been the whipping boy of the financial world. You've probably seen the ads. I hate annuities, and you should too. They've been painted as this terrible, high-fee product to be avoided at all costs. But recently, the conversation has started to shift. A few years ago, the investment magazine Barron's ran a cover story with the headline, "Best Annuities with Their Steady Income Payments. Annuities are suddenly hot." So what's going on? The truth is, while some annuities are terrible, lumping them all together is a huge mistake. It's about knowing the difference between the good and the bad. For people at or near retirement, the power of a simple, immediate annuity is undeniable. Tony Robbins tells the story of a 65-year-old man with a $500,000 nest egg who needed a safe, guaranteed income right away. A bank CD would have paid him about $1,100 a year. Bonds would have given him about $15,000 a year, but with the risk that his principal could drop if interest rates went up. An immediate annuity, it would pay him $32,700 a year, guaranteed for the rest of his life. That's a 2,750% increase over the CD. Now, the common objection is, what if I die early? The insurance company keeps my money. But as one expert put it, if you are dead, who cares? What's painful is if you live too long with no income. That's the traditional use. But the real game changer is a modern product called a hybrid fixed indexed annuity, or FIA. This is what's getting all the attention. Think of it as the holy grail for your safe money. It offers 100% protection on your principal. You can't lose a penny. But here's the magic. You also get to participate in the stock market's gains. If the market goes up, you get a piece of the upside. If the market crashes, you lose nothing. On top of that, you can add a feature called a lifetime income rider, which turns the account into your own personal pension, giving you a guaranteed paycheck for life. Tony Robbins was so blown away by this upside without the downside concept that he went on a mission. These products used to be only for wealthy people in their 50s and 60s who could make a big lump sum deposit. So, he partnered with one of the largest annuity distributors in the country, a firm called Advisors Excel, and challenged them. He said, "Let's create a version of this for everyone." They worked with the biggest insurance companies in the world to create a new, revolutionary type of FIA that younger people can get into with small monthly contributions, just like a 401k. This new generation of products has completely changed the game. But how do you navigate this world and find the right one for you? The author gives a clear action plan. He mentions a website, lifetimeincome.com, that was created to help people do exactly this. You can go there, get a free analysis of any annuities you already own, and see what a personalized lifetime income plan would look like for you, based on what you can contribute. The site can connect you with specialists who can answer your specific questions. The FAQ section of the book addresses the big concerns. What if you die early? With these new hybrid products, your entire account balance goes to your heirs. What about fees? There are no annual management fees taken from your account. The only fee is for the optional income rider if you choose to add it. What if you need your money in an emergency? You can typically withdraw up to 10 to 15% per year without a penalty. The bottom line is that a properly structured annuity can be an incredibly powerful tool. It's not about hating a product category. It's about understanding how to use the right products to secure a guaranteed income for life. Secrets of the ultra-wealthy that you can use too. Have you ever wondered why a billionaire would need a life insurance policy? The Guinness World Records noted that some mystery billionaire bought a policy worth over $200 million. It seems crazy, right? His family would be fine without it. But Tony Robbins reveals that the ultra-wealthy aren't buying life insurance for the death benefit. They're using it as a powerful legal tax shelter. It's been called the insider's secret for the affluent. Think of it as a rich man's Roth IRA. Major corporations and banks like Wells Fargo park billions of dollars of their core capital in these policies. Why? Because you put in after-tax money, it grows completely tax-free, and when structured correctly, you can access it tax-free. The power of this strategy is all about eliminating the biggest drag on your investments: taxes. By taking taxes out of the equation, you can accelerate your path to financial freedom like nothing else. Tony Robbins gives a clear example. If you need $125,000 a year after tax to live, a traditional financial plan would say you need to save up about $5 million to generate that kind of income before taxes. But if your investments are growing in a tax-free environment, you only need to save $2.5 million to get the same spendable income. You literally cut your retirement savings goal in half. Or look at it another way. A $1 million investment in a taxable account might grow to $7 million over 40 years. In this tax-free structure, it could grow to over $30 million. That's the staggering power of tax-free compounding. So, how do you get access to this? This isn't about the expensive, high-commission life insurance policy that your local agent might sell you. The super rich use something called private placement life insurance, or PPLI, which is an institutionally priced product with no commissions or surrender charges. For a long time, this was only available to accredited investors with very high net worths. But here's the game changer for the rest of us. There is now an accessible version of this strategy. Tony Robbins points to nonprofit organizations like TIAACREF, which was originally founded by Andrew Carnegie. Because of their nonprofit structure, they can offer a life insurance product that has the same powerful tax benefits, tax-free growth and access, but without the high commissions or high net worth requirements. It's a way for anyone to use the same strategies as the billionaires. Finally, after diving into this powerful investment strategy, Tony Robbins offers one last crucial piece of advice to protect the wealth you build. It's something everyone needs, not just the rich: a living, revocable trust. This is a simple legal document that ensures that if something happens to you, your assets go directly to your family without having to go through a long, expensive, and public court process called probate. It also protects you while you're alive if you become ill and can't manage your own affairs. In the past, this was an expensive legal process, but you can now get templates for free online or use a service like LegalZoom to set one up for just a few $100s. It's an essential final step to make sure the legacy you build is protected for the people you love. Invest like the point. 0.001%, the billionaire's playbook. Meet the masters. So after all the myths and strategies, we finally get to the main event, what Tony Robbins calls the billionaire's playbook. This is the part of the journey where he sits down with the masters of the universe, the greatest financial minds on the planet. For 4 years, he went on a quest to interview more than 50 of them, from self-made billionaires to Nobel Prize winners. And he asked them all the same core question. If you couldn't pass any of your money down to your children, what portfolio and what set of principles would you give them to ensure they could thrive? These masters don't all sing from the same hymn sheet. They have different opinions, different strategies. There are many paths to the top of the mountain. Tony Robbins shares these cool little moments, like getting to see a friendly debate between former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and publisher Steve Forbes, or being the one to introduce two legends, Carl Icahn and Jack Bogle, for the very first time. It just goes to show that there's no single right way to win the game. Despite all their differences in tactics, Tony Robbins found that all of these financial giants share 4 core obsessions. These are the fundamental beliefs that drive their success. First, and this is huge, don't lose money. It sounds simple, but they are absolutely obsessed with it. Legendary trader Tudor Jones says that for him, defense is 10 times more important than offense. They know that if you lose 50% of your money, you have to make a 100% return just to get back to where you started. Protecting your capital is rule number 1, 2, and 3. The second obsession is to risk a little to make a lot. They are constantly hunting for what they call asymmetric risk-reward. They're not looking for a good return. They're looking for a home run where the potential upside is just massive compared to the potential downside. Tudor Jones won't even make a trade unless he believes he can make $5 for every $1 he risks. Third, they anticipate and diversify. These masters do their homework like crazy. They dig deep until they know an investment inside and out. But they also have the humility to know they could still be wrong. As one of them said, by the time you get all the information, everyone else knows it and you no longer have an edge. So, to protect themselves from the unknown, they diversify. And the fourth obsession is that they're never done. These are some of the wealthiest people on the planet, and they could have retired decades ago. But they never lose their hunger to learn, to grow, to earn, and most importantly, to give back. They understand that true wealth isn't about what you have, it's about what you contribute. So as we dive into these conversations, you're not just getting stock tips. You're getting a masterclass in how the best in the world think. You're learning the principles that will prepare you for any economic season so you can build your own path to financial freedom. Carl Icahn, Master of the Universe. What if a single tweet could be worth $17 billion? That's exactly what happened when legendary investor Carl Icahn tweeted that he was buying Apple stock. The share price jumped almost instantly. Icahn, one of the most important and yes, feared investors in America. Forget the stereotype of the ruthless corporate raider. Icahn sees himself as a shareholder activist. His mission? To find big, underperforming companies and, as he says, shine a light on them to force change and unlock value for the average shareholder. So how does he do it? Icahn's main strategy is to buy a huge chunk of a company and then go to war with the management. He's not shy about it. He gives the example of his public fight with Coca-Cola. The company was planning to issue billions in new stock to fund massive pay packages for its top executives, a move that would have diluted the value for every regular person holding Coke stock in their retirement account. Icahn blasted them publicly, calling out the board for being a fraternity or club where you must not ruffle feathers. His critics say he's just in it for a quick profit, that he pumps and dumps stocks. But a Harvard study actually proved the opposite. It found that when Icahn gets involved, the companies he targets are actually stronger and continue to outperform for years after he's gone. This tough-as-nails persona didn't come from nowhere. Carl Icahn wasn't born with a silver spoon. He grew up on the streets of Queens, the son of a teacher and a frustrated opera singer. He was a smart, competitive kid who paid his way through Princeton by playing poker. And that's where he learned his most important lessons. After a brief stint in the Army, he hit Wall Street, made some money, bought a cool convertible, and then lost everything in the crash of 1962. But he didn't quit. He clawed his way back by mastering a complex type of trading called arbitrage. That experience, losing it all and coming back, forged the resilient, tenacious investor he is today. So, what's the playbook? How does he consistently win? He looks at companies not as tickers on a screen, but as a collection of assets. And he believes that 90% of the time, the reason a company is failing is because of bad management. He sees his job as simply getting the CEO off the golf course. He also has an incredible ability to see what other experts miss. He tells the story of his investment in Netflix. All the analysts were worried about how Netflix would pay for new content, but Icahn and his son Brett saw it differently. They looked at the billions of dollars in subscription fees coming in every year and realized the company's cash flow was much stronger than anyone believed. It was a simple observation that made them a fortune. But when you strip it all away, Icahn says his motivation has changed. He says, "It may sound corny, but at this point in my life, I am trying to do something to keep our country great." He's fighting to make corporate America more accountable, and he's putting his money where his mouth is, donating millions to create charter schools that demand that same level of accountability. He's the master of the universe, fighting one battle at a time. David Swensen, a $23.9 billion labor of love. There are some investors who are household names, and then there are the quiet legends who the pros all study. Tony Robbins introduces us to one of those quiet legends, David Swensen. He's been called the Warren Buffett of institutional investing. For nearly 3 decades, he's managed Yale University's endowment, growing it from $1 billion to over $23 billion. The thing about Swensen is, he's not in it for the money. He could be making exponentially more on Wall Street, but he's dedicated his life to serving the university. He's a true innovator who completely changed the game with what's known as the Yale model of investing. Swenson didn't pull any punches. He said that for the average person, the investing world is a mess. Why? He points to a fundamental conflict of interest in the mutual fund industry. The companies make more money by charging you high fees, which directly lowers your returns. He says, the profits win and the investor seeking returns loses. He also explains that the performance numbers we see are incredibly misleading. The stats that show 96% of mutual funds fail to beat the market don't even include the hundreds of funds that performed so badly they went out of business. It's called survivorship bias. So the reality is even worse than we think. And on top of that, we as investors tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. We chase the hot, 5-star funds and sell the ones that are doing poorly. We systematically buy high and sell low. So what's the solution to this mess? Swenson says investors only have 3 tools, or levers, to pull. You can try to pick the right stocks, you can try to time the market, or you can focus on asset allocation. And he says, asset allocation, how you divide your money among different types of investments, is overwhelmingly the most important. In fact, he says it accounts for more than 100% of returns. How can that be? Because trying to time the market and pick stocks usually costs you money in fees and bad decisions. He quotes the father of modern portfolio theory, Harry Markowitz, who famously said, "Diversification is a free lunch. It's the one thing you can do to lower your risk without lowering your expected return. It's the key to winning." So what does the master himself recommend? What is the David Swenson blueprint for an individual investor? It's an elegant and surprisingly simple portfolio made up of 6 low-cost index funds. But the mix is aggressive. He recommends putting 70% of your money into growth-oriented assets. Here's the recipe: 30% in U.S. stocks, 15% in foreign developed stocks like Europe and Japan, 10% in emerging market stocks, 15% in real estate through REITs. That's the 70% for growth. The other 30% goes into the safety of U.S. Treasury bonds. But he splits that 30% in half. 15% in regular long-term Treasury bonds to protect against deflation, and 15% in Treasury inflation-protected securities, or TIPS, to protect against inflation. It's a long-term, equity-focused strategy designed for growth, but it's also intelligently diversified to handle whatever the economy throws at it. It's a powerful lesson from a man who isn't just playing the game, he's mastered it. John C. Bogle, the vanguard of investing. When you think of the giants of investing, a few names come to mind. But Tony Robbins introduces us to a man who might be the most important of them all for the average person, Jack Bogle. Fortune magazine named him one of the 4 investment giants of the 20th century. He's the man who founded Vanguard and, more importantly, he's the creator of the very first index fund. Today it seems obvious, but back in the 1970s, the idea of a low-cost fund that didn't try to beat the market, but simply was the market, was revolutionary. It was mocked as Bogle's folly. One competitor even called it un-American. But Bogle's logic was simple and undeniable. As a group, investors can't beat the market because they are the market. He turned that simple truth into Vanguard, now the largest mutual fund company in the world. And it all happened because he was fired from his previous job. That failure, he says, was the catalyst for his greatest victory. So what is Jack Bogle's core philosophy? It's that the entire game of active mutual fund management is stacked against you. He's famous for saying that investing is maybe 95% luck and 5% skill. To prove his point about the illusion of genius, he uses a great analogy. If you put 1,000 gorillas in a room and have them flip coins, one of them will eventually flip heads 10 times in a row. In any other field, you'd call that luck. In the fund business, he says, you'd call him a genius. He backs this up with some brutal math. Bogle shows that because of the high fees charged by actively managed funds, the average investor ends up putting up 100% of the money and taking 100% of the risk, only to receive about 30% of the reward over their lifetime. The other 70% gets eaten up by fees. It's a devastating, slow drain on your wealth. Given his track record, People always want to know what Bogle thinks is coming next. He's generally optimistic about the long-term growth of American companies. But he also warns about the challenges, like the massive government debt and the unwinding of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. He stresses that history rhymes, and we shouldn't be surprised by another financial crisis. So how does he deal with the emotional roller coaster of the market? He admits that when the market drops 50%, I feel miserable. I get knots in my stomach. His solution? He says he gets out his own books on staying the course and rereads them to remind himself to not panic. He advises everyone to ignore the noise, turn off the screaming heads on CNBC, and just get a life. So, what is the Bogle blueprint for success? It's beautifully simple. First, decide on your asset allocation, the mix of stocks and bonds that fits your own tolerance for risk. Then, diversify using low-cost index funds. And finally, and this is his most famous piece of advice, once your plan is in place, don't do something, just stand there. Don't trade, don't chase trends, don't react to the daily noise. He shares his own personal portfolio as an example. He keeps about 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds, all through Vanguard's simple low-cost index funds and tax-exempt bond funds. It's a no-nonsense, disciplined approach that has served him well for decades. He shares a fantastic story about the writers Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. They're at a party hosted by a billionaire, and Vonnegut points out that their host made more money in one day than Heller made on his masterpiece novel, Catch-22. And Heller's reply was perfect. He said, "That's okay, because I have something he, our host, will never have, enough." That simple idea is at the heart of Jack Bogle's message. It's not about accumulating the most, it's about building a life. And thanks to his lifelong crusade, millions of regular people now have a fair shake at doing just that. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. When you talk about the legends of investing, there's one name that stands above the rest. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. He's the humble guy from Nebraska who turned a failing textile company, Berkshire Hathaway, into one of the largest and most successful companies in the world. He became one of the planet's wealthiest people through his famous value investing strategy, finding great, undervalued companies and holding them for the long term. Tony Robbins recounts the time he found himself in the green room of the Today Show with Buffett himself. He saw his chance and asked if Buffett would do an interview for the book to share his wisdom on how the average person can win in today's volatile economy. Buffett, with a twinkle in his eye, politely declined. He told the author, "I'd love to help you, but I'm afraid I've already said everything a person can say on the subject." And he's right. For decades, Buffett has been sharing his wisdom in his famous annual letters to shareholders. But Tony Robbins pressed him on one key question. What portfolio would he recommend for his own family to protect and grow their wealth after he's gone? And Buffett's answer was incredibly simple and powerful. He said that for the average person, indexing is the way to go. The most famous stock picker in history, a man who built a colossal fortune by analyzing and choosing individual companies, says that the best strategy for most people, including his own family, is to simply buy a low-cost index fund. His advice is to invest in great American businesses without paying the high fees that most fund managers charge and just hold on for the long term. He repeated this exact advice in his annual letter to shareholders, hammering the point home. He was so clear about it that he even published the exact instructions he left for the trust that will manage his wife's money after he passes. The plan? Put 90% of the money in a very low-cost S&P 500 index fund and the other 10% in short-term government bonds. That's it. No complexity, no high fees, no trying to outsmart the market. Just a simple, powerful, and disciplined approach. But does this simple strategy actually work better than the high-priced experts? Buffett was so sure of it that he put his money where his mouth is. He made a public $1 million bet against a prominent hedge fund firm. He wagered that a simple, low-cost S&P 500 index fund would outperform a hand-picked portfolio of 5 elite hedge funds over a 10-year period. So what happened? A few years into the bet, the S&P 500 was up nearly 44%, while the hand-picked high-fee hedge funds were up just over 12%. The lesson couldn't be clearer. For the greatest investor of our time, the path to long-term success isn't about finding the next hot stock. It's about owning a piece of the entire market and letting it grow. The Oracle of Omaha has spoken. Paul Tudor Jones, a modern-day Robin Hood. When you talk about the greatest traders of all time, the name Paul Tudor Jones is always near the top of the list. This is a guy with an almost mythical track record, 28 straight years of positive returns. He's legendary for predicting the Black Monday stock market crash of 1987. While everyone else was losing their shirts, Jones and his clients made a nearly 200% return for the year. But that's only half the story. Jones is just as famous for his other identity, founder of the Robin Hood Foundation, an organization that has invested over $1 billion to fight poverty in New York City with the same rigor he applies to the financial markets. So what's the secret to his incredible decades-long success? It all comes down to one core philosophy, forged in the wild commodity trading pits where he got his start. He says, defense is 10 times more important than offense. He saw fortunes made and lost in the blink of an eye, and it taught him that the most important thing is to protect your capital. He's not focused on what he can make. He's obsessed with what he can't afford to lose. As he puts it, I want to know I'm not losing it. From that defensive mindset, Jones has developed a trading philosophy that he says is like a $100,000 MBA in 2 thoughts. It's brilliantly simple. Rule number 1 is to always trade with the predominant trend. He's not a contrarian. He believes in riding the wave, not fighting it. And he uses a simple technical tool to tell him what the trend is. The 200-day moving average. If a stock or an asset falls below that line, he's out. No questions asked. It's a mechanical rule that takes the emotion out of the decision and forces him to play defense. It was this exact rule that got him out of the market right before the 1987 crash. Rule number 2 is the 5-to-1 rule. This is his key to asymmetric risk-reward. He will not enter a trade unless he believes he can make $5 for every $1 he risks. This discipline is a game changer. It means he can be a complete imbecile, as he says, and be wrong 80% of the time, and still not lose money. It's about putting the odds so heavily in your favor that you don't have to be perfect to win. So what drives a man who has already achieved this level of success? In the interview, Jones shares a touching, deeply personal story that reveals his true motivation. He talks about being a little boy, getting lost in a crowded market, and feeling terrified. Then, a kind stranger took his hand and helped him find his mother. He says, "You never forget stuff like that." That small act of kindness spawned a lifetime of trying to repay it. Today, his financial stress isn't about making more money for himself. It's about being able to fund the massive philanthropic projects he's passionate about, like a 100-year conservation project to restore a piece of land to its natural, beautiful state. His focus has shifted entirely from personal gain to creating a lasting legacy. He's a true modern-day Robin Hood. Ray Dalio, a man for all seasons. Now we circle back to a name that has been part of the DNA of this book from the very beginning. Ray Dalio. He's the founder of Bridgewater, the largest hedge fund in the world. He's the guy world leaders and central banks call for advice. Tony Robbins describes his interview with Dalio as finding the holy grail he was seeking for all of us. Why? Because when he asked Dalio the same question he asked every other financial legend, what portfolio would you leave for your own children? Dalio shared something priceless. He laid out an investment plan designed to work in all economic seasons, a way for the average person to grow their money without risking their life savings. This is a strategy that, until now, was only available to his institutional clients who could invest hundreds of millions of dollars. The generosity of him sharing it is just astounding. So, you're probably on the edge of your seat waiting for the exact formula. But Tony Robbins believes it's too important, too foundational to be treated like just another tip in a long list of interviews. The entire detailed blueprint for Ray Dalio's all-season strategy, the philosophy, the back-testing, and the exact percentages for your own portfolio, is laid out in full detail in chapters 5.1 and 5.2. If you've skipped ahead, this is your cue to go back. Don't cheat yourself. Understanding the why behind the strategy is just as important as the what. The context is everything. He's the master of all seasons, and the keys to his kingdom are waiting for you right there. Mary Callahan Erdos, the trillion-dollar woman. Throughout this journey, we've heard a consistent message from some of the biggest names in finance. For the average person, low-cost index funds are the way to go. But now, we meet a powerful voice with a different perspective. Mary Callahan Erdos, the CEO of JP Morgan's Asset Management Division. She's been called the trillion-dollar woman for a reason. She oversees a staggering $2.5 trillion. And she makes a compelling case for the value of active management. So, who is this woman who holds so much power on Wall Street? Her story is fascinating. Finance is in her blood. Her father was an investment banker, and she grew up playing office at his desk on weekends. She went on to be the only female math major in her class at Georgetown. But what really defines her is her leadership style. Her colleagues don't describe her as aggressive or ruthless. They use words like loyal and caring. This brings us to her core argument. When confronted with the statistic that 96% of active fund managers fail to beat the market, Erdos doesn't flinch. She makes the case that while many fail, the truly skilled managers, the best of the best, can and do provide real value. She argues that a great active manager can look at two similar companies and, through deep research, identify the better long-term investment. As she says, their track records have proven that active management, compounded over long periods of time, makes a very large difference in your portfolio. Her proof? The trillions of dollars that the world's most sophisticated investors entrust her firm to manage. But her most powerful insight might be her philosophy on what makes a good investment plan. For her, it's not about finding a single magic formula. It's about personalization. When asked what portfolio she would leave for her own 3 daughters, her answer was profound. She said she couldn't give them all the same plan because every single permutation will vary over time. One might be a big spender, another more philanthropic. One might get married, another might not. Their lives will change, and so their financial plans must change with them. She emphasizes that a plan must be perfect for the person. She says that if sticking to a perfect asset allocation causes someone so much stress that it ruins the quality of their life, then what's the point? In her words, if I cause more stress by taking half that portfolio and putting it in a stock market, but that leads to a deterioration of the happiness in their lives, why am I doing that? For Mary Callahan Erdos, the best investment plan isn't the one with the highest potential return on paper. It's the one that's built around your life, your goals, and your ability to sleep well at night. T. Boone Pickens, made to be rich, made to give. When you think of the legends of American business, you have to talk about T. Boone Pickens. Dubbed the Oil Oracle, this is a man who was ahead of his time in every sense. He was the original corporate raider back in the 80s, though he always preferred the term shareholder activist. The ideas he fought for, like maximizing shareholder value, were once considered revolutionary. Today, they're standard practice. This is a man who made his first billion after turning 70, lost most of it, and then set about earning it back while giving more than $1 billion to charity. After recently falling off the Forbes 400 list, he famously tweeted, "Don't worry, at $950 million I'm doing fine." He's a true American original. So where does a man like this come from? His character was forged by these incredible, almost mythic moments in his childhood. He tells the story of his own birth in rural Oklahoma in 1928. It was a difficult delivery, and the doctor told his father he'd have to choose between saving his wife or his child. But his dad refused to accept that. He talked that doctor, who had never performed a C-section before, into doing one based on just a page and a half of instructions he'd read in a book. Both mother and child survived. That lesson in decisiveness, in refusing to accept a bad outcome, shaped Pickens's entire life. Another time, as a boy delivering newspapers, he found a lost wallet. He returned it to its owner, who rewarded him with $1, a lot of money back then. But when he got home, his grandmother made him take the $1 back, telling him, "Son, you're not going to be rewarded for honesty. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Decisiveness and integrity. Those are the values at his core. This brings us to his investment playbook, and it's very different from the other masters. While many focus on carefully managing risk, Pickens is famous for his willingness to take big risks to make big rewards. He says when he analyzes a deal, he knows that if he hits it, he's going to knock it out of the park. But he also knows he might strike out. When asked what investment philosophy he would pass down to his own children, he dismisses the idea of a specific portfolio. Instead, he says he'd pass on a good work ethic. For him, it's not about a formula. It's about a mindset of hard work, education, and the courage to make a decision. As he famously said about a weak management team he was trying to take over, these guys can't even pull the trigger. They just aim, 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 and they never fire. T. Boone Pickens always fires. So what drives a man like this today, at 86 years old? It comes down to his final mission, which has two parts. The first is his Pickens Plan, a crusade to make America energy independent by using our own vast natural gas resources instead of relying on foreign oil. He's put $100 million of his own money into this fight. The second part is philanthropy. He's one of the most generous donors in history, having given over $500 million to his alma mater, Oklahoma State University, alone. He truly believes he was put on this earth for a reason, to be successful, to make money, and be generous with it. When Bill Gates and Warren Buffett asked him to join their giving pledge, he joked that they should join his club, since he'd already pledged to give away 90% of his wealth back in the 80s. For T. Boone Pickens, it's all fun. The work is fun, his family is fun, and he still thinks every single day is going to be a home run. Kyle Bass, the master of risk. In the world of high finance, there are legends who seem to see the future. Kyle Bass. This is the man who famously made a massive, successful bet against the U.S. housing market before the 2008 crash, turning $30 million into $2 billion. But Bass doesn't see himself as a crystal ball reader. He describes himself as just some idiot from Dallas asking questions. And it's those simple, profound questions that led him to find one of the greatest trades in modern history, all based on his core philosophy: asymmetric risk, reward. So what makes a guy like Kyle Bass tick? His drive comes from what he calls hunger and pain. He was a competitive diver in his youth, which taught him intense mental discipline. But the real fire came from watching his parents struggle financially. He swore he would never be in that position. That pain created a hunger for success that has defined his entire career. It's a powerful reminder that our personal histories often shape our entire approach to money. This brings us to his legendary trade, the one that put him on the map. Back in 2005 and 2006, everyone was convinced the housing market could only go up. But Bass started asking simple questions. He saw that for 50 years, home prices had moved in perfect sync with people's incomes. But suddenly, housing prices were skyrocketing while incomes were barely moving. The numbers were wildly out of whack. So he went to the big Wall Street firms and asked them, "Can you show me a model of what happens if home prices just go flat?" And here's the incredible part. Not a single firm had a model for that. They had all bought into the hype. After doing his own research, he discovered a way to bet against the housing market where the risk was almost non-existent. He found a trade where he could risk just 3 cents for the chance to make a full dollar. It was an insane, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity based on simple math and doing the homework no one else was willing to do. And this wasn't a one-hit wonder. Bass proved his method was repeatable. After the housing crash, he used the exact same framework to analyze the debt of entire countries. He and his team built their own balance sheets for the nations of the world and ranked them from best to worst. The analysis clearly showed that Greece was a ticking time bomb long before it made headlines. He then identified his next big trade, a bet against the stability of the Japanese bond market, which he calls the most mispriced opportunity in world history. It's the same pattern: deep research, identifying a flawed consensus, and finding a cheap way to bet against it. So, is Kyle Bass a huge risk taker? He says no. And his core philosophy explains why. He says, "I never set myself up for the knockout punch." His whole strategy is about finding investments where the downside is protected. The ultimate metaphor for his thinking is his now famous nickel trade. He literally bought millions of dollars worth of US nickels because he calculated that the raw metal inside them was worth more than their 5-cent face value. His downside? A nickel is always worth 5 cents. His upside? A guaranteed profit. That's how a master of risk thinks. It's not about being a daredevil. It's about finding a game you can't lose. Mark Faber, the billionaire they call Dr. Doom. If you've ever felt like the only person who thinks the market is getting a little crazy, you're not alone. Tony Robbins introduces us to a man who has built a legendary career on that very feeling, Mark Faber. He's a Swiss billionaire investor, but you probably know him by his famous nickname, Dr. Doom. His investment newsletter is literally called the Gloom, Boom, and Doom Report. Faber is the ultimate contrarian. His guiding philosophy comes from the old Baron Rothschild saying, "The best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets." While everyone else is focused on the US market, he's looking for bargains in Asia. He's an outspoken critic of central banks and has a knack for being right about market crashes, which is how he made a fortune back in 1987. So what does Dr. Doom think about the financial world? Let's just say he's not optimistic. He believes the industry is filled with salespeople who sell you a dream while they're the ones who walk away with all the money. His view on the current market? He thinks most things are wildly overpriced. His advice is often radical. Sometimes the best, most profitable move you can make is to do nothing. As the famous trader Jesse Livermore once said, "The most money made is by doing nothing, sitting tight." For Faber, that means holding cash and waiting patiently for one of those rare, incredible opportunities that only come around every few years when everyone else is panicking. This brings us to the doctor. Doom portfolio itself. It's a globally diversified mix designed to weather any storm. When asked about his personal asset allocation, he lays out a fascinating blueprint. He keeps about 30% to 35% in bonds and cash. He has about 20% in stocks, a relatively small position. He has another 30% in real estate, primarily in emerging markets like Vietnam. And finally, a significant 25% of his portfolio is in gold. Why so much cash and gold? He sees them as a hedge. In a world where asset prices are inflated, he believes that having cash gives you the power to act when things get cheap. And gold, it's his protection against a system where governments can print money out of thin air. It's a portfolio built not on predicting the future, but on being prepared for anything. When asked about the math adding up to more than 100%, he jokes, "Who cares? I'm the US Treasury." At the end of the day, Mark Faber's entire philosophy can be boiled down to one crucial lesson. It's the advice he says he would pass down to his own children. It's not what you buy that's most important. It's the price you pay for it. He believes the biggest mistake investors make is buying things at a high price out of excitement, only to get discouraged and sell when they drop. The secret to success, he says, is to have the discipline and the cash to buy when your neighbors are depressed and everything is on sale. He admits that we have no clue what will happen in the future, and that's why diversification is key. But for most people, he says, the best investment is probably in their own business, the one place where they have a true insider's edge. Charles Schwab, talking to Chuck, the people's broker. If you've ever seen a commercial and been told to talk to Chuck, you know exactly who we're talking about today. Charles Chuck Schwab. This is the man who fundamentally changed Wall Street forever. Before him, investing was an exclusive club with outrageously high fees. But Schwab launched one of the first discount brokerages, kicking off a revolution that gave regular people a fair shot at building wealth. He's a West Coast outsider who took on the New York establishment and built a financial empire with over $2 trillion in client assets. And he did it all while overcoming a personal struggle with dyslexia, a challenge he didn't even put a name to until he was in his 40s. So what was his secret? How did he build this massive company from the ground up? In his interview, Schwab explains that his entire business was built on one simple yet radical idea, looking at every single product and service through clients' eyes. He said that Wall Street's philosophy was always, how much money can we make on this first? Okay, let's go sell it, boys. Schwab did the complete opposite. He asked what was best for the customer and then figured out how to make a little money from it. The perfect example is when he started offering hundreds of no-load mutual funds for free. His competitors were baffled, but it built incredible trust and loyalty. It was a customer-first approach that completely changed the game. This brings us to his core investment advice. And given his company's vast array of options, his answer might surprise you with its simplicity. While he is a sophisticated investor himself, he believes that for the other 98% of the population, the best approach is to predominantly invest in low-cost index funds. His reasoning is straightforward. He says most people, doctors, lawyers, teachers, have other important things to do in life. It's nearly impossible to be a professional at your own job and also be a professional investor. You just can't do both well. For him, index funds provide the most predictable outcome, giving you broad diversification at the lowest possible cost, all while harnessing the long-term growth of great American companies. But to really understand the man, you have to look beyond the business. Schwab's success is rooted in a simple formula: get a good education, get a job that fits the marketplace, work hard, and have the discipline to put money aside. He shares how his struggle with dyslexia taught him one of his most valuable lessons. You can't do it all yourself. It forced him to learn how to build a team of great people who were better than him at different things and inspire them to work toward a common goal. Today, at 76, he says his passion is greater than ever, now driven by the joy he gets from his philanthropy, from helping kids with dyslexia to supporting museums and charter schools. He's a man who truly changed the character of Wall Street, not by being the loudest voice in the room, but by being the one most focused on serving the people. Sir John Templeton, the greatest investor of the 20th century? In a world that often separates spirituality from finance, there are rare figures who manage to master both. Sir John Templeton. This wasn't just a brilliant investor. He was a profound humanitarian. He was the original contrarian, a man whose entire philosophy was built on a simple idea: the best time to buy is at the point of maximum pessimism, or, as another famous investor put it, when there's blood in the streets. He famously proved this theory at the very start of his career. It's 1939. The world is still reeling from the Great Depression, and Hitler's troops are rolling into Poland, kicking off World War II. While everyone else was panicking and selling, John Templeton borrowed money and bought $100 worth of every single stock trading for under $1 on the New York exchanges. A few years later, that single act of courage was the foundation of his massive fortune. He was also a pioneer in international investing and later created the Templeton Prize, an award for spiritual achievement that's even larger than the Nobel Prize. So what was the secret to his success? It wasn't some complex algorithm. It was a deeply held ethical and spiritual belief. Sir John argued that the key to prosperity is to be a go-giver, not a go-getter. He believed that if you always strive to give your customers and your employees more than they expect, you build trust. And when you build trust, your business will flourish. He felt that there was no conflict between high ethical principles and financial success. In fact, he saw them as being directly linked. This philosophy was backed by an incredibly disciplined investment method. First, he practiced what he preached about: thrift, saving 50% of everything he earned, even during the Depression. Think about that. Half of his income went straight to investments. Second, as we've learned, he bought at maximum pessimism and sold at what he called the peak of optimism, or even euphoria. He would gauge the psychology of the market to know when it was safe and when it was dangerous. And third, he had a brilliant rule for knowing when to sell. He would only sell an existing investment when he found a new one that he believed was a 50% better bargain. This simple rule kept him from selling too early and forced him to constantly be on the hunt for deep value. On top of all that, he was a huge believer in global diversification, knowing that if you spread your investments across many nations, you're protected when one country inevitably goes through a bear market. But perhaps the most powerful lesson from Sir John Templeton has nothing to do with money at all. When asked how to deal with the fear that paralyzes so many investors, his answer was simple: gratitude. He said, "If you wake up each morning and think of 5 new things for which you're overwhelmingly grateful, you're not likely to be fearful." He believed that fear and gratitude cannot exist in the same moment. For him, life wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was a marvelous, exciting adventure, and the ultimate goal wasn't a bigger bank account, but spiritual growth. It's a profound final lesson from a man who truly mastered both the market and himself. Just do it, enjoy it, and share it. The future is brighter than you think. In a book about financial freedom, you might be wondering why we'd take a detour to talk about the future of technology. The reason is simple. Technology is a powerful, hidden asset that's compounding every single day to improve our lives. Having a compelling vision of the future is what helps us get through a tough today. And when you see what's coming, you'll understand that even if you're starting late, the quality of your life is set to improve in ways you can't even imagine. The key thing to understand is that the pace of change is no longer steady and predictable. It's exponential. Our brains are wired to think in straight lines, but technology is moving in leaps and bounds. We're in the middle of what's being called the maker revolution. Tony Robbins tells the story of Easton LaChapelle, a teenager from a tiny town in Colorado. With no formal training, he used the internet to teach himself robotics and 3D printing. In his own bedroom, he built a sophisticated, mind-controlled prosthetic arm that's stronger and more capable than an $80,000 commercial version. The cost to make his? About $250. This is the power of democratized innovation. With tools like 3D printers and the vast knowledge of the internet, anyone, anywhere, can become a creator. We're seeing everything from printable houses in China that cost just $5,000 to custom-fit running shoes and even human organs being created layer by layer. The power to invent is no longer in the hands of a few giant corporations. It's in the hands of anyone with a great idea and an internet connection. This revolution is about more than just cool gadgets. It's about solving humanity's biggest challenges. It's about the end of scarcity. For centuries, our biggest fears have been rooted in the idea that there isn't enough to go around, not enough food, water, or energy. But technology is a resource-liberating mechanism. Remember when the world was terrified of running out of whale oil for lamps? Then, the discovery of crude oil made that scarcity irrelevant. Today, we're seeing the same thing happen with our modern challenges. New technologies are making it possible to create clean drinking water from air, and vertical farms are growing food with a fraction of the land and water. Technology consistently turns what was once scarce and precious into something abundant and accessible. As technology solves our material problems, as we move toward a world of abundance where our basic needs are met, how will we find meaning? Tony Robbins points to the predictions of futurists like Ray Kurzweil, who believe we're heading toward a singularity, a point where human and artificial intelligence merge. But what happens in a world with no struggle? The book shares a powerful parable from a classic Twilight Zone episode. A gambler dies and wakes up in what he thinks is heaven, a casino where he can't lose. He wins every hand, every time. At first, it's a dream come true. But after a few months of effortless winning, he's bored out of his mind. He complains to his angelic guide that there must be some mistake. The guide just smiles and asks, "What makes you think you're in heaven?" It's a chilling reminder that a life without challenge, without something to strive for, can become its own kind of hell. The future is bright, but it will ask new questions of us. The next great frontier won't be about accumulating things, but about creating a life of purpose and fulfillment. The wealth of passion. We've been on this incredible journey to master the game of money. We've learned the rules, shattered the myths, and built a plan for financial freedom. But as we get to the end, it's time to ask the most important question of all. What is this really about? Tony Robbins shares a story about being at an interfaith peace conference with the Dalai Lama. The room was filled with religious leaders from every tradition, and as they got into the details of their beliefs, the conversation got heated. Finally, the Dalai Lama raised his hand and, with a gentle smile, reminded everyone of the one thing they could all agree on. He said that from the goat herder in Afghanistan to the financial trader in New York, everyone has the same ultimate goal. They just want to be happy. That's the real bottom line. As Tony Robbins always says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So, if happiness is the real goal, how do we achieve it? The quality of our lives isn't determined by what happens to us. It's determined by 3 decisions we make in every moment. The first decision is, what are you going to focus on? Are you focusing on what you have or on what's missing? Are you focused on what you can control or what you can't? Where your focus goes, your energy flows. It's easy to get caught up in what's wrong, but if we consciously shift our focus to what we're grateful for, our entire experience of life changes. The second decision is, what does this mean? An event happens, and we instantly give it a meaning. A business deal falls through. Does it mean I'm a failure, or does it mean this is a learning opportunity to come back stronger? A relationship has a conflict. Is this the end, or is it the beginning of a deeper level of understanding? The meaning you choose creates the emotion you feel. And the third decision is, what are you going to do? Your focus and the meaning you create put you in an emotional state, and that state drives your actions. If you're in a state of anger and frustration, you'll act very differently than if you're in a state of gratitude and determination. We can train ourselves to make these decisions consciously. Tony Robbins talks about a concept from psychology called priming. It's about conditioning your mind for success. He describes his own daily 10-minute routine. He spends a few minutes focusing on what he's grateful for, from the big things to the small ones. He sends blessings to his family and friends, and he focuses on his top 3 goals as if they've already been accomplished. This simple act of priming sets the tone for the entire day. It's like standing guard at the door of your mind and only letting in the thoughts that will make you strong. The wealthiest people aren't just wealthy in their bank accounts. They are wealthy in their spirits. And that ultimate wealth comes from living for something bigger than yourself. It comes from passion and contribution. Malala Yousafzai, the young woman who was shot by the Taliban for daring to advocate for girls' education. When asked if she was afraid they would try to kill her again, her response was breathtaking. She said, "They only can shoot a body, but they cannot shoot my dreams." She has found a cause so powerful that it has eliminated her own fear. That is the wealth of passion. That is what this journey has truly been about. Finding a life of meaning, a life of purpose, and a life of joy. The final secret. We've learned how to master the game of money, how to build a plan, and how to protect our future. But after all of that, we have to ask, what is the real point? What is the final secret to a truly wealthy life? We've all heard the saying, money can't buy happiness. And for a long time, research seemed to back that up. Studies showed that once you hit a solid middle-class income, around $75,000 a year, making more money doesn't really move the happiness needle. But new science tells a different story. It turns out money can make you happier. It all depends on how you spend it. Researchers have identified a few key ways to turn your money into real, lasting joy. You can invest in experiences, like a great trip, which creates memories that last a lifetime. You can also buy time by outsourcing tasks you hate, like cleaning the gutters, which frees you up to do things you love. But the single most powerful way to buy happiness is to invest in others. Study after study shows that spending money on someone else gives us a bigger and more lasting jolt of happiness than spending it on ourselves. It doesn't matter if it's $5 or $5,000. Giving makes you happier and, get this, even healthier. This idea of giving goes even deeper. It can be a powerful path to healing. Tony Robbins shares the incredibly moving story of J.T. Lewis, a young boy whose 6-year-old brother, Jesse, was killed in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. In the midst of unimaginable grief, J.T. connected with a group of orphans who had survived the genocide in Rwanda. A young woman who had witnessed her own parents' murder told him that the only way to heal was to be grateful, to forgive, and to find a way to serve others. That message sparked a mission in J.T. He dedicated himself to raising money to send her to college. In that act of giving, he found a purpose beyond his own pain. Contribution can be the most powerful antidote to suffering. This isn't a new idea. The modern era of philanthropy was kicked off by industrial titans like Andrew Carnegie, who realized that after a life of accumulating wealth, true meaning came from giving it away. That legacy continues today with people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Chuck Feeney, who have all pledged to give away the majority of their fortunes. It's not a strategy or a financial product. It's a mindset. The secret to living is giving. True wealth isn't about what you get. It's about what you have to give. And when you live from that place, you are truly the richest person in the world.